Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, the game streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical Studios. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
How about Willie's guy, Jeremy Lazan, last night, scoring for the Predators?
Got one.
He got one there. Now, they did not play very well last night as a team, led in large part by Tyson Barrie. But they ended up losing. But Jeremy Lazan scored. And I had to text Willie last night, and I said, that's my guy, after Lozon scored. Now, let me say this. I've been doing some thinking, Ian.
Sounds dangerous.
Well, we might make this into a topic at some point. But, Willie is playing, and there's some people on Twitter, too, that are like, you were wrong about Lozon 3 years ago card. But I've been thinking, and I'm like, it sounds very much like Willie's you were wrong about Nick Folk card. But Nick Folk has 2 PATs, and his missed PATs last year for the Patriots are part of the reason why I was skeptical. And you'd be 7-7 if he could kick an extra point.
Well,
so should I celebrate that victory on the Nick Folk thing, or should I
some
take
of those
the
were
L
some
that I've already acknowledged?
Holder issues, right?
No, I don't think that was a Holder issue. He kicked the ball fine against Miami with Zettner holding the ball.
Yeah, the one of the misses I think was a Holder issue. But
Vrabel said that it wasn't Tannehill's fault in the Colts game.
Yeah, well, he's still been a very good kicker.
I'm just saying. So we're starting on this today. Mike Vrabel got up at the podium, and of course, inevitably, he's going to be asked about the status of his quarterback. And he was asked about Will Levis, and he said Will would not practice today, which he also said on his coach's show yesterday. And then was asked about who was going to get the first team snaps, and he said Tannehill was going to get the first team snaps. But then, in Vrabel fashion, was as vague as he possibly could be by saying, well, Malik's also going to be with the offense. So then finally somebody asked a question about whether or not Ryan Tannehill would start if Will Levis couldn't go. And he basically said Ryan Tannehill's going to be the quarterback if Will Levis can't go. Now, it's a big if Will Levis can't go. But the gist of it is all the talk for the last 2 days about should it be Ryan Tannehill? What is there to gain by playing Ryan Tannehill? Should it be Malik Willis? Well, that's over. Mike Vrabel has told you that if it's not Will Levis, it's going to be Ryan Tannehill. The only thing I am surprised by, I'm not surprised by Vrabel making that decision. The only thing that I am surprised by is the fact that Vrabel said it today, which I actually think for the first time in his life was the right thing to do. The first time, and when I say the first time in his life, the right thing to do, the first time in his life that he chose to tell you something in a press conference that you know deep down inside, every natural inclination inside of his body is to hold that information to himself. It was the right decision to squash it today of the Ryan or Malik talk. Now, it is the right decision if they end up going for Tannehill for many reasons. Number one, Vrabel spent all day today talking about how the team doesn't quit and talked about getting ready for the Seahawks and wasn't talking about evaluations or momentum into next year. And Gentry Estes even asked that question about the idea of, hey, what about building some momentum into next year? He's like, I don't want to talk about that. Was asked about playing spoiler and if that played a role, said no. So the true reason that this team is going to motivate itself to play football, according to the head coach, is because that's our job and we love football and we'll play football. Well, I don't think you can have that attitude and then start Malik Willis. Not one person on the planet thinks that Malik Willis, not one person. And this is a country that cannot agree on anything. We know Ryan Tannehill is better than Malik Willis. So it would be incredibly hypocritical of the head coach to sit there and say, guys, we're going to give it our all the rest of the season, even in these meaningless games, and then run Malik Willis out there. In fact, I think it's worth discussing, and nobody has really brought this up. Why was Malik Willis the backup in that Ravens game? The one that you lost in large part because of special teams ineptitude, but you had a chance late in the game to punch the ball in and at least give yourself an opportunity. And Malik, as he is want to, hopped right back into the field of play. But you can't have your message be, we play hard until the final snap, and then roll Malik out there over Ryan Tannehill, because the players know. The second thing is that I really do believe that Chig and Burks and Spears and Skoronski and Wiley, and hell, I'll even throw Jalen Duncan in there, even though I don't think he's really like a long-term option for this team. But those guys need more reps. Like, they need more actual snaps. I don't mean like, hey, you need to throw 5 balls to Burks. You need to throw 5 balls to Chig. You need to run the ball with Spears 23 times. They just need more game reps. Like, they need to play more. They need to practice more. They need to all of those things because they are young guys. And the only way anybody ever gets better at any kind of skill is by doing it. The only way to get better at basketball is to play basketball. The only way to get better at anything, the only way to get better at lying is to lie. Well, the same is true with football. So these guys are going to shut it down, and there's not going to be any live reps until August 10th of this upcoming year. These guys need the reps. And when it comes to playing quarterback, you are more likely to continue drives and have more offensive plays with Ryan Tannehill as the quarterback than you are with Malik Willis. When it comes to Chig and Burks and Wiley, you are more likely, and I'll throw Spears in there too because he catches the football probably better than most of those guys. You are more likely to be put in a similar situation that you'll be in the rest of your NFL career with Ryan Tannehill throwing you the ball than you will be with Malik Willis. And then, to me, there are kind of the selfish reasons here, right? Like, those are the real football reasons why Vrabel should go with Tannehill over Willis. Then there are the selfish reasons that really aren't the football. And I've got one for the team, one for the coach, and one for me. For the team, their selfish reason is there are still 2 home games on the schedule this year. They care about tushes in seats. They already gave up 1 home game to go to London against the Ravens, which again, as we learned last week, they could have protected, and they didn't, and I'm somewhat disappointed by that. But they want tushes in seats, and I know they want tushes in seats because they pretty much lied to everybody about Ryan Tannehill playing in the last preseason game, only for him to come out there and take 3 kneel downs, basically, and then go to the sideline and put a ball cap on. I mean, blistering heat. Tannehill's going out there to say, 180 turbo hut 3 times, hand the ball off to Spears, put a ball cap on. But they made sure everybody knew Tannehill was going to play in that game. Why? Because they want butts in seats. And there are 2 games left. And if you tell the fans Malik Willis is going to play quarterback, nobody's showing up to the game. In fact, I was thinking about that today. I am planning to go to the game on Sunday, and I will tell you this right now. If you sit there and say, hey, Malik's playing quarterback, see ya, I'm not going. I don't want to watch Malik play quarterback anymore, which is another selfish thing we'll get to in a second. Then there's Vrabel. And why it would be selfish for Vrabel to play Ryan Tannehill over Malik Willis. I know everybody's telling you that there's no chance Mike Vrabel gets fired. And look, I don't know. I don't talk to Amy Adams Strunk. Quite frankly, I don't think she talks to anybody in the local press, so I don't think anybody really knows. But it does feel like it's inevitable that Vrabel's going to come back as the coach. Go do what the Chargers did on Thursday Night Football. See if you come back. Wasn't that game Thursday night? And Brandon Staley was trending in the direction of getting fired anyways. But wasn't that game Thursday night kind of the moment that everybody said, get this bum out of here? There is no way to look at that halftime score Thursday night and justify retaining the coach. That is, they've quit on this team. Put Malik at quarterback, go on the road to Houston in 2 weeks, see what happens. And again, I don't think that you're necessarily going to win these 3 games with Tannehill as the quarterback. But I feel very certain that you're not going to lose by $10 million. And that you are also infinitely more likely to lose by 10 million if Malik plays quarterback, which I think would be very bad for the head coach. So I think it's a very selfish reason to play Ryan Tannehill. It's like, hey, I just don't want to get my rear end spanked, and my fans demand that I fire the offensive coordinator and everything else. And if we put Malik in there, we're not going to get a first down in these games. So let's not do that. And then finally, my selfish reason. I don't want to watch Malik Willis play football. I've seen enough. I was excited when they drafted Malik because the draft gurus told us that he had first round potential. And I even said it at the time. I said first round pick or third round pick with a first round hype. And it was first round hype. It was ridiculous. And then very early on, we learned Malik Willis isn't very good. I remember last year, everybody got mad because I said, Malik Willis stinks right now. And everyone's like, that's not fair, Jared. He played at Liberty. He's a rookie. And I'm like, I said right now, as in if he went into a game right now, he would stink. That's not fair, Jared. And I'm like, I wouldn't make him the backup quarterback. And they did. And they paid for it. I was even thinking about this yesterday. If John Robinson had a real backup quarterback behind Ryan Tannehill and had Malik Willis as the third string developmental quarterback, and they won that Chiefs game, would they have fired him at 8-4 after the Eagles game? Would have been kind of hard to do that, right? So I'm done watching Malik play. I watched, he did improve from year one to year two. The problem was he was so bad in year one that is not that much better in year two that it makes a difference. So I know Malik's not going to be the backup quarterback next year. It would be criminal if he is. He's probably going to be in the same third string role for the next 2 years, and then they'll move on. But I don't need to watch him play football anymore, not unless I have to. Now, I'll say this about Malik. The Titans are good, and they get into a game where the two quarterbacks get hurt. Malik has to go in there. I'll love him because there won't be another choice. But as far as I have a legitimate, there's a choice between Tannehill and Willis, I'm going to watch Tannehill play football. And so that right there, I think Vrabel's making the right call. And really the only reason to play Willis would be to tank for draft position, which I just don't think matters. Like, I just don't think the difference between the 7th pick and the 12th pick is that big of a deal. And then on top of it, I also, maybe just to confirm that Willis isn't a backup in the NFL. But don't we already know that? 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in. 615-737-1025. And I still think the most shocking part of this is the fact that Vrabel actually told people what he was thinking about. Now, as far as Tannehill is concerned, there is something about Tannehill that I would not rule out. And we'll get to that coming up next. Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025. If you want to weigh in, 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game.
Who's taking the first team snaps?
I would imagine that Ryan will take those snaps, and Malik will be with the offense as well, and then we'll see where it goes.
How's Ryan handled these last 8 or so?
Really well as possible. I mean, it's not an easy thing to do. Has been professional, has been supportive, and trying to do what everything he can to help the team.
Ryan Tannehill is the backup quarterback of the Tennessee Titans. No questions asked. Vrabel later in the press conference saying if Will can't go, Ryan Tannehill will be the quarterback. Now, there's one thing I have been thinking a lot about and kind of kicking around in my head over the last couple of weeks, and that is the idea of Ryan Tannehill returning to the Titans in 2024. Now, I wouldn't expect it, but I'm not going to rule it out either. And here's what I would do at the end of the year. And I think, again, Vrabel talking about how professional Ryan has handled the situation, knowing how hard it's probably been on Ryan Tannehill. Here's what I would do if I were the Titans. And we've talked about all the needs the Titans have. I mean, the needs they have. A starting left tackle, a starting center, a starting right guard, a starting right tackle, a starting receiver, a starting tight end, two starting inside backers, a starting defensive tackle, a starting defensive end, 2 starting corners, and a starting safety. We fries with that? Backup quarterback's probably also on that list. But here's what I would do if I were the Titans. I would tell Ryan Tannehill, hey, go out, see what's available. If there is a starting job available for you, take it. If there is a backup job that is available to you where the starter is on pretty thin ice, take it. But if you don't find that kind of job, come back to us and be the backup. 1 year, $7 million, something like that. Come back, be the backup behind Levis, and we would love to have you back. And I don't know, again, I don't know what, how Tannehill would respond to that. My guess is he's smart enough not to turn around and burn a bunch of bridges. So it wouldn't surprise me if he said, okay, I am going to go look for a starting job, but thank you for letting me know that. And I'll tell you why. I mean, I think that that's a no-brainer if Tannehill doesn't find a starting job for him to come back to be a backup here. I mean, number one, he's a leader, and he's a veteran guy who clearly has a good relationship with Levis. I mean, I heard somebody say that they did an event earlier in the season, maybe it's on the bye week, something like that. They did an event at the Covenant School, Tannehill and Levis, when Tannehill was still the starter and Levis was the backup. And it just seems like those two have a really good relationship. Levis has talked about that. I think that's important for a young quarterback, where the allegiances are, hey, man, like, we got each other's backs, more than, oh, yeah, I'm also another coach for this team. But secondly, I think the reason why I would welcome Tannehill back if I'm the Titans is because have you seen how many of these quarterbacks around the league are getting hurt? I mean, every game it feels like. It's a national game. We're lucky if there are 2 starting quarterbacks playing in that game. I mean, I'm just thinking off the top of my head. This week had about 8 national windows, right? Thursday night football, 2 backups. Saturday football, first game, Cincinnati, Minnesota, 2 backups. So now you're at 4. Pittsburgh versus Indianapolis, 2 backups. So now you're at 6. Russell Wilson and Jared Goff for starters, which takes us to what was the Sunday night game? The Ravens and Jags, 2 starters, and then Monday Night Football, Drew Lock's a backup. I mean, backups, it's half the league right now, it's backups. So we've gone, because the NFL has an offensive line problem that stems from the collective bargaining agreement where they don't let anybody practice anymore, and they've cut away a preseason game, and they don't wear pads ever, and they don't hit each other, so the only time that they really practice real offensive line play are the games. So we've gone from that to today where we got nothing, and so everybody needs a backup quarterback. The days of, hey, Jim Sorgi is going to back up Peyton Manning because we're screwed if Peyton gets hurt, those days are over because everybody's getting hurt. So that's I wouldn't rule out bringing Tannehill back, because if you bring Tannehill back, there's a pretty good chance at some point Tannehill's going to have to play. Keeping it real. But that's what I would do. I'd tell Tannehill, hey, if you go out there and you go out into the market and the Pittsburgh Steelers say, hey, you know what, just this Trubisky and Pickett thing, it's not working out. Like, come on. Fine. Good. But if you want to come back, there will be a spot here for you behind Will Levis. And I don't know how Tannehill would react to that. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com, 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in today. Brad is in Green Hills, going to kick us off today. Thank you for calling and waiting. What's up, Brad?
Hey, Jared, you just stole my thunder, but 3 quick points. Yeah, Malik Willis is not even close to being a pro starting quarterback, and the Titans cannot have him on the roster because, like you said, the likelihood of the backup quarterback getting in the game next year is very good. The other thing, too, of course you got to play Tannehill. You pay him $30 million. If he gets hurt, he gets hurt. But he's making $30 million this year. He's a good quarterback and step up. Third point is you're right, the draft. They've done a horrible job of the draft besides Big Jeff. And I could care less where they are in the draft. They're probably going to screw it up anyway. So my book is they trade off their draft picks for other picks or whatever, get some cash, whatever. Super excited about next year, though, $100 million in cap space. We should be able to build an offensive line and get you're right on the money with Tannehill. I'd say maybe $10 million for next year. He might stay for that. But good stuff. Thanks, Jared.
Yeah, I'm just going to tell you right now, if you can't draft, you're never going to get out of the hole. Like because a lot of Titan fans have said this for you. Oh, what's the point of drafting? You're never going to get out of the hole. I mean, free agency is important. Trust me, it is. But I mean, you have to be able to draft, and not just draft in the first round. Like, you have to be able to draft in the 4th round and the 5th round and things like that. Like what Roger McCreary has done, where they drafted him in the 2nd round and from day one was a starter at corner and has improved into a really good player in year 2, that is what the draft is supposed to be. And that's why Roger McCreary is the 2nd best player on this defense behind Jeffrey Simmons. Like, that's what they need to start doing. The idea of, we can't draft anyways, that's not going to cut it. I'm just going to tell you that right now. Now, as far as, trading picks and things like that, that's a different discussion. And the cap space stuff, that doesn't matter to me. It's all about the real money. In fact, I heard Paul today basically calling me dangerous because I said yesterday that the Titans are banking on a bunch of PSL sales for the new stadium. And I don't know what point he was trying to make, but he said that the finances of the Titans are good. I didn't say the Titans were poor. What I said is the Titans are going to have to pay one way or another. If the Titans don't pay for better players and the Titans try to go on the cheap and Aaron Brewer's going to be your starting center for the next couple of years, well, they're not going to win any games and nobody's going to show up. And so then when nobody shows up and nobody buys PSLs, there will be money out of their pocket that they thought were going to be paid with PSLs. So if they don't want to spend the money in free agency or trading for players to extend the contracts or things like that, if they don't want to pay the players, well, then you're going to end up paying on the back end anyways. That's all I'm saying. And money is money, right? It's not like this pot of money where, no, this is reserved only for player contracts and then this money over here. No, money's money. Some teams like spending money. Some teams don't like spending money. The Bengals don't like spending money. Then they got good. Now they're like, okay, I guess we got to spend some money. But it's just dollars and cents. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025. By the way, did you hear that earlier this morning, Ian? I'm dangerous.
I did hear that, actually, yeah.
Dangerous. I like it.
You and Baker Mayfield.
Dangerous. 615-737-1025. There is a small minority of fans that are claiming Will Levis should not play the rest of the season behind this offensive line. Should he? That's next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
far as Will's schedule this week, we just have him rehab during practice and try to do everything he can to get himself in a position.
He's like every other player that won't be out there today. They're doing everything they can to get back. And then we'll have to make a decision on their availability based on their health.
That was Vrabel today. Will Levis said, if I can play, I will play. One texter says, Malik stinks. Levis is the future. Start Tannehill for the rest of the season and do not risk your future getting hurt again for petty wins. And let me say this. I understand the concept. And we did see the Titans do this in 2015. Now, things were a little different in 2015 because the Titans were in play for the number 1 overall draft choice. And Mariota, I think, was dealing with a pretty serious knee injury. But they went with Zach Mettenberger for like the last 3 games or something like that. And I mean, he freaking sucked. It was awful. And I think that was kind of part of the plan. Now, a year later, when they finished 9-7, and they played that last meaningless game against the Texans, don't want to correct Paul on this, but this morning he was like, I guess, did you hear Joe's rant where he did Paul's article where he told the fans to shut up about tanking?
In Paul's voice, yes, yeah. I did.
I laughed out loud. I mean, like,
it was
and not only
good.
that, when Paul did the George Plaster impression, I died.
That was pretty good,
I laughed so hard. But
it's fun this morning.
Part of that article was that, not since 2015 have the Titans been eliminated. That's not true. In 2016, they played a game, that last game of the year. They played a meaningless game against the Texans. And the question was, with Mariota hurt with a broken leg, was Matt Castle going to be the quarterback that game? Or was Alex Tanney, a younger, not backup quarterback, was he going to be put in the game to play quarterback since he was younger and, let's see what you have in Alex Tanney? And there was a big discussion then. There was a lot of arguing then about, do you try to win? Do you go with Tanny? And then ultimately it didn't matter, and people forgot that they even argued about it, which would probably be the same thing that happens here. But that was a legitimate debate around there for about a week. If Will Levis can play, Will Levis plays. Because the only way you get better at doing anything is by doing it, right? Like, the only way you get better at carpentry is by working with wood. Like, I don't think there's anything that I can do other than actual carpentry that would make me a better carpenter, right? The only way you get better at public speaking is to speak publicly. The only way you get better at talk radio is to do talk radio. The only way you get better at football is to play football. And so when I look at the Titans and I look at Levis, I'm like, he needs as many live reps as he can possibly get. And the earliest he could get a live rep after the end of the last game against Jacksonville, the earliest he could get a live rep the rest of the way would be on August 9th, probably, of next year. And that's if they play him in the preseason. And Mike Vrabel hopefully learned his lesson this year about the preseason. But Mike Vrabel is want to not play his guys in the preseason. So I want Will Levis, if he's healthy, to play as many snaps as he possibly can. Because, again, the only way somebody gets better at football is to play football. This isn't like I felt in the beginning of the year when I was like, hey, man, you throw him out there with this terrible team, you're going to ruin him. And part of the idea of putting him with a terrible team and ruining him is about the development in him as far as how people feel about him, confidence-wise. Well, the Falcons game and the Dolphins game, I think, have probably given enough that even if he makes some mistakes down the stretch, there will be enough to where the entire city and the entire team is behind him going into next year. One texter says, with the 7th pick, the Titans could get the top 2 left tackles. With the 12th pick, they'll miss out. That is reality. A big drop-off after the first 2 tackles in Fashanu and Joe Alt. Let me tell you something right now about the draft. And we'll get into this at some point. Ian, are we allowed to use Pro Football Focus grades as like I don't want to say like a point in an argument, or how do we feel about using Pro Football Focus?
Well, that is a good question. I
don't really believe in Pro Football Focus, but I think like the general consensus is right.
It can be used as a reference point. I think that's fair.
It's kind of like a polygraph. Like, I would not, if I was a judge and you brought Pro Football Focus into my courtroom, I'd probably throw it out. But
Not the end all be all. Yeah.
I was looking at the guard grades today on Pro Football Focus. Like, I don't think Calvin Throckmorton, who's a couple spots ahead of Peter Skoronski in terms of grades, I don't think Calvin Throckmorton is a better guard than Peter Skoronski. But I think some of these guys that are way ahead, like Matthew Bergeron of the Falcons, who's a rookie and wasn't a first-round pick, or Steve Avila of the Rams, who's a rookie and wasn't a first-round pick. I mean, those guys are night and day, according to Pro Football Focus, better than Peter Skoronski. So just because the draft gurus tell you that there are 2 left tackles out there does not mean that that's actually the case. I remember 2 years ago when everybody was telling me that Ike Ekwonu out of NC State was probably, maybe, possibly the number 1 overall pick in this draft, or the most talented player in that 2022 draft. Then Carolina took him 6th overall. Then I didn't watch one snap of Carolina football between when he was drafted and when you ended up playing them a couple of weeks ago. I think Jalen Duncan might be better than him. And that's saying something because Jalen Duncan is not very good. So I don't care about the 7th, 12th. Either your team is good at drafting or they're bad. And right now, the way it's been lately, and John Robinson's certainly culpable in this and a part of this and everything else, has been bad. Texture says, I'd love to see Tannehill in Pittsburgh. I just threw that out as a possible place. The place that probably makes the most amount of sense for Tannehill is Atlanta. The problem is, Atlanta might fire their coach. So who knows? Texture says, Tannehill is going to be out of here like the cat out of the bathtub. I'm not a cat person. I guess they hate the bathtub, Ian.
Most of them, yeah.
Okay. Tannehill's going to be out of here like a cat out of a bathtub. I am telling you, nobody wants to play for Vrabel anymore. They love him, but they all see he doesn't have the formula for winning games. I have no idea how you would know that. I don't know that. I don't understand. Texter into the text line says, hey, Jared, if the cap is fake, why not give Tannehill $20 million to come back? Because the cap is fake, but the money is not. And so when they go to Amy Adams Strunk and they say, hey, how much money do we have to spend on players in free agency? She's going to give them a number. And let's say it's $183 million, which realistically it could be this year. It won't be, but it could be. Well, you're going to just take $20 million of that and give it to your backup quarterback? No. No, sir, you will not. Now, that doesn't mean that everything's got to be nickel and dime the way they treated Kevin Byard this past offseason, but no. You're not going to give your backup quarterback $20 million. Hell, Tannehill might even come back in favor of that over a starting job if you offer him $20 million. And the answer is because it's $20 million. Wes in Clarksville says, if playing football makes you better, how come Andre Dillard didn't get better? I think he got worse. No, I think Andre Dillard sucked the whole time. I think that's the problem. I actually heard today, Joe was talking about Jeff Stoutland, the offensive line coach, because I guess the morning show, and I really lump Paul into this because I think he might be more of the driving force behind this than the other two. But I think the morning show believes that offensive line coaching doesn't matter, which is shocking to me. I mean, Bob Shoop told me that offensive line coach might be the 3rd most important coach behind the offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. But whatever. And they were talking about how Jeff Stoutland was a great offensive line coach. He's the best offensive line coach in the NFL for the Eagles, or at least that's what they say. I don't know. But he couldn't fix Andre Dillard. Well, when they had to play Andre Dillard because Lane Johnson got hurt and Jordan Mailata moved to right tackle, Andre Dillard was able to keep Micah Parsons in front of him. I don't think we would expect that around here. So he must have coached him at least to be able to be a backup, which, again, you can't really coach him to do that here. Texter says, it is idiotic to think there isn't an advantage in the 7th pick over the 12th. Of course there's an advantage in the 7th pick over the 12th pick. I just don't think it's that big of a deal. Not a big enough deal to want to purposely lose these last 3 games. That's not a big enough deal to me. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in. 615-737-1025. Chris Sanders will join us. His reaction to the season so far, the horrendous loss that they had the other day, and everything else with the Titans. We'll do that coming up next. Hey, join me and Chris and Derek at Teddy's Tavern this Sunday from 9:30 to 11:30 for the award-winning pregame show. We'll be breaking down the Titans and the Seahawks. And our award-winning pregame show is presented by Parman Tractor and Equipment and The Beast Unleashed. Hey, let's be in the Christmas spirit. Can we not for once? That's what I'm going to do right now. So I'm going to give away some Preds tickets. Be caller 5 right now at 615-737-1025, and you will win a pair of tickets to see the Predators take on the Chicago Blackhawks at Bridgestone Arena on Tuesday, January 2nd. Tickets are available at NashvillePredators.com/tickets. Chris Sanders joins us now on the program. Chris, I figured that we'd do the pleasantries right there to make the people happy, because we've got to talk about the horrendous performance from the Titans on Sunday, highlighted by the horrendous offensive line and the horrendous injury to the quarterback, which has essentially wrapped up a horrendous season. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of tough. It's kind of like being on a roller coaster. You're going up and up and up, and then all of a sudden you go down. Because if you look at when the offense started, they had an 11-play drive, 83 yards, and a touchdown by Will Levis. So now you're feeling good, and then now you're up 13-0. So you're like, okay, they're about to blow the Texans out. Then all of a sudden you go to the second half, and it was just kind of like a totally different game. It was like the Texans were like, you know what, we're the better team, and they went out and showed it. It was just kind of disappointing because I was expecting the Tennessee Titans to just go out and blow the Texas team because they had so many guys out. They should have dominated this team, but the Texans did the opposite and won the game, man. It was unreal.
Chris, did you have a problem with the play calling from Tim Kelly?
I mean, I never want to disrespect the coach, but there was one play I didn't understand when they went in went in Wildcat with Derrick Henry.
I thought that was so stupid.
It was just at a weird time of the game. I don't know, like you're driving, and then all of a sudden you go on the Wildcat. I'm like, no, just keep doing what you're doing. And I'm not disrespecting his play call, but it was just kind of a weird scenario of, okay, let's just get in the Wildcat. I'm like, why? You have the momentum. Just keep doing what you're doing.
Chris, do you think that the idea of handing the ball to Derrick Henry on first down too much was a bad idea? And the reason I ask you is because I believe the reason why the Titans did it, I don't have as much of a problem with it as I think a lot of the fans do. I think what happened was the Titans felt like in order to throw the football effectively, they were going to have to do it out of play action. In order to run play action, the other team has to think you're going to run the ball. In order for the other team to think you're going to run the ball, you have to run the ball. And I think you made a lot of money off of play action and everybody thinking it's going to be a run and throw the ball deep down the field and it's a touchdown. And they didn't hit on any of that outside of those two early plays to Burks. Did you have a problem with running on first down as much as the fans and everybody else did?
I don't mind you running on first down, but it was kind of predictable. And I'm going to tell you why, because I went back and looked at the film. When Hopkins is out the game and Burks is out the game, if I'm a defensive coordinator, what do you think? It's gonna be a run. You keep the receivers in there, get in some formations to make them think you're gonna throw the ball and then run. But I know everybody's kind of upset. Okay, Derrick Henry had 16 carries for 9 yards, but he was consistently getting hit in the backfield. When I know you're gonna run the ball, I'm just gonna load the box and just come after the running back. But it started with the formation. They were in 12 personnel, 1 back, 2 tights, and 2 wide receivers. But the 2 wide receivers you had in, we're not going to catch the football. You had Hopkins, you had Burks on the sidelines, and you had NWI and more out there, and you just know it's a run.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about the injury to Levis?
I mean, it's kind of tough. I mean, I don't know if he's going to play this week. I think Tannehill is going to start. I really don't know, but just watching his injury, dog, he was getting blasted, man. I mean, he was taking a 3-step drop. He's in shotgun. He's got 4 and 5 guys in his face. And now you have a situation. I know Derek alluded to this earlier, and you alluded to this earlier, with this offensive line. If the offensive line consistently is bad, you're going to get this kid hurt, and that's exactly what we saw with Will Levis.
Do you think that the offensive line's problems are simply the personnel and that the coaching has nothing to do with how bad it is?
It's personnel. I mean, and I never like to talk about a player, but I'm going to have to. I mean, Dillard is bad. Radins is bad, and we saw that in camp. And then you have, Duncan in there that's consistently getting blasted from Maryland. Because if you look at the offensive line, when Duncan was coming out of Maryland, the knock on him is he struggled in pass pro. They talked about he was good in the run game, but pass pro. So when the defense sees that you struggle in pass pro, they're sending 3 or 4 guys your way because you don't know how to pick up the twists or blitzes. So, it's kind of disappointing because, each year we keep talking about the same thing that the Tennessee Titans need to do. We need a left tackle. And then you bring in Dillard, who is not a Vrabel guy. He's just not. I'm trying to say this in a nice way. He is.
You're saying he's soft.
I'm not saying he's soft. I'm never going to call a man soft, but he just doesn't have that stankness, that dog that I'm going to rip your head off. I'm talking the guy that I'm kind of talking about is kind of like a Taylor Lewan. Taylor Lewan does some goofy stuff, but he's still got that dog in you that he's going to hit you in the mouth. With Dillard, it's more of a passive, okay, I just got to block and I just got to pass pro, as opposed to, man, I'm about to get in your face. That's kind of what I'm talking about.
Former Titans receiver Chris Sanders is with us on the program. How do you feel about Vrabel?
Man, that's a tough question. I mean, it's kind of hard because of the personnel that's in there. I know everybody wants to blame John Robinson, but I think he needs to take the blame a little bit also, because everybody kept telling him, you need a left tackle, you got to get wide receivers, you got to get a kick, you got to get all these things. And it's kind of like, I want to do it my way, but your way is not producing any wins. So, it's kind of disappointing, but if they give him another year, I think he can probably turn it around. God,
why do you think that?
I think with him and Rand Carthon, they got to figure out a way to get some players in here. I mean, right now.
You mean like Andre Dillard?
Yeah.
Like the players they brought in last year?
No.
Luke Gifford? Aziz?
Gibbons? I forget about Gibbons now.
No. That was there when they got here, but yes, he stinks.
I mean, you gotta just figure this thing out, man. I mean, if he stays here another year, in my opinion, this is just me, I'm just talking out loud, I think a bombshell is going to come out to where at the end of the season, he might say, I want to go somewhere else. So, he might not even be here.
Where are you coming with that from?
I don't know. I just have that gut feeling. I just really do. Every time I have that gut feeling, something crazy comes in the air. Just like the situation with John Robinson, it just had that gut feeling that in the third game, or the fourth or fifth game, something crazy was going to happen. I'm not putting this out there. I'm not saying it. I'm not starting a rumor. But sometimes when you're going through a bad situation, sometimes you just want a different atmosphere, a different vibe, a different management. I just don't know. In my gut feeling.
You know what I mean?
It's a little different, man. His body, I know he has a weird body language sometimes, but it's really different. I can't put my finger on it. It's kind of like a kid that, never mind, go ahead.
Well, you know Mike Vrabel for what? 30 years?
But see, I've never known this side of Mike Vrabel. And I play with Mike Vrabel at the Ohio State University, but I've never been around him in a coaching situation. But just watching him when he first got in here, even when they lost, there was still some energy. There was still some passion. There was still some go get it. But just looking at him at the podium, it's just kind of a different feel. I can't really put my thumb on it. It's just a different feel. So I don't know.
Do you think he hates it here?
I don't know if he hates it here. I just think that, he's just getting tired of the same questions answered that he doesn't know how to answer. I think that he's kind of tired of it. Everybody's asking left tackle. Everybody's asking about the offensive line. Everybody's asking why they don't throw it to Burks. Everybody's asking why don't you fire the special teams coach. I think, when you keep hearing the question over and over.
Well, not everybody was asking that. Just one person, and that one person was right.
Yeah, and he was right, but just, over and over and over. I know you, but it's just that when somebody's asking you the same question over and over and you don't have an answer, sometimes you have that kind of attitude of, that woe is me and I just want to get out of here. I don't know. I'm just saying that.
As a player who lived through 3 8-8 seasons in a row before you guys finally broke through there in '99, how important are these final 3 games?
They're very important. I mean, the thing about it is you're going to find the character of your team. You're going to find that all that stuff that you were talking about at the beginning, we're going to stick to the plan. We're going to stick to the process. We're going to work hard. We got character. All this stuff is great. But now you got an opportunity to showcase to your fans that we don't have no quit. You can showcase to your fans that even though we're not going to the playoffs, we're still going to fight. Because the thing about it is, if you lose these 3 games and you don't go into the momentum next year into the draft, into the free agency, you're going to have a bad taste in your mouth. But if you win these 3 games and go with momentum, you're going to give the fans something to look for next year. So it's up to them. And I always say this quote all the time, big dog. You got 2 choices.
Get better,
get bitter
or get bitter.
Let's go, baby.
Chris Sanders, as always. Chris, we will see you Sunday for the game, for the award-winning pregame show, where I am sure we will say a lot of crazy stuff.
Like we do all the time.
All the time. Chris, take care.
Appreciate you, bro. Love you, bro. Bye-bye.
Yep, Chris Sanders joining us as he always does here on the program. And you heard Chris there. He's like, Vrabel just kind of seems a little off. Somebody in the text line says, I have been telling you this. I study people. Vrabel is off. He's gone after the season, either fired or by choice. He is very uncomfortable right now, says the texter. He should be. They did a terrible job this offseason. And while, it's so funny, like nobody knows who's in charge of the Titans, so it's always a moving target. Like if I sit there and I say, let's use Andre Dillard as the example. Andre Dillard stinks. You will have people out there that say, well, Vrabel's the coach. That's not coaching. That's personnel. Okay. Well, then blame the personnel guy. Well, that's not fair. Vrabel makes all the decisions. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just a constant back and forth. It's like ping pong. 615-737-1025. Coming up next. Speaking of the commission, I was thinking about this from Ran Carthon's perspective. Where does Team Ran sit on this season? And I think they've got 3 choices going forward. I'll explain. We'll do that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical Studios. So I've been thinking about this, right? Ian, I have decided that if I owned this football team, I'd fire Vrabel and Ran Carthon at the end of the year. I'd start over and move on, right? And I feel like most people are against that. I think there's a lot more people out there that would be interested in firing Vrabel than firing both of them. But I also think even the firing Vrabel, I mean, I really do think it's kind of 50-50 out there as far as how people feel about the coach. I don't even know about you. Would you fire Vrabel?
Probably not, no.
Okay. So, there's kind of this feeling that Vrabel's going to return next season, that Rand's going to return, that the commission's going to gear up for another year. Now, Ian, let me ask you this. Same results this offseason. Bad free agency, draft picks you have to make excuses for except for Tajay Spears and the quarterback. Then would you fire Vrabel?
You mean if this next season went the same as this past season?
If Andre Dillard and Aaron Brewer 2.0 show up next year.
I mean, yeah, you'd have to seriously consider it, yeah.
I mean, I'll just say it like this. Did you think it could get worse than Dennis Daly at left tackle last year?
I mean, you would like to think no.
And so, what if it gets worse next year? I didn't think it could be worse on the offensive line this year.
Mm-hmm.
But you're saying at that point, then it's probably a foregone conclusion. That
yeah.
Okay. So here's what's going to happen. Vrabel and Rand are going to come back, and if they don't get it right, they're going to get fired. Period. Both of them. I don't even think it's worth discussing. I just think it's reality. So now you're Ran Carthon. And we're going to play a little bit of an exercise here. We're going to look at things instead of looking at them the way that we do, which is we want what's in the best interest of the Titans, or we want what's, best for our fandom. We're going to look at it as if we are part of Team Ran. Think of ourselves as Ran Carthon's agent. What does he do? I think he's got three choices. The first choice is go with the status quo, right? After the season's over, hold a press conference, say, we did our best. We're going to go out there and work harder, and we're not going to rehash last year, but we're going to focus on this year, and we're excited with our financial flexibility and our potential in the draft and implementing our system and being here for a year and blah, 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 blah. And then behind the scenes, again, going with the status quo of Miss Amy, Mike and I really screwed up on Andre Dillard and Aaron Brewer. And we over-evaluated Arden Key's impact. But trust us, we'll get it done. And actually mean it. Like, actually tell Amy Adams Strunk we screwed up. Because, when we ask Vrabel about the roster construction or the offensive line or Dillard or whatever, he pivots to not talking about it. You can't do that when the owner asks you. When the owner asks you, you have to answer the question. And I'm sure the owner has asked, and it's like, how'd you screw that one up? How'd you screw up on Aaron Brewer? How did you take a 270-pound center and think this guy's worth $4.3 million? And they actually have to answer that question, right? Vrabel can't just say to the owner, Bruce played some good football for us. No, you got to answer that. But if he does that, goes with the status quo, and says, Miss Amy, Mike, and I, we're going to band together and we're going to collaborate our asses off to get this football team right, then he is hitching his career to Mike Vrabel. GMs do not get second chances. Vrabel will get a second chance, maybe even a third. GMs do not get second chances in the NFL anymore. So if he and Vrabel are running it back the same way next year and they don't get much, much better, then they will both be fired this time next year. So the first choice for Ran Carthon is go with the status quo, gear it up with Vrabel, and bank your career on him. I don't know how we feel about that. Again, we're not Team Titan, we're Team Ran. How do you feel about banking your career on Vrabel? Now are the other choices. Number 2, throw Vrabel under the bus. Now this one is privately. Miss Amy, we did our best to get Mike the players he wanted, but guess what? The players he wanted stunk. And even over our objections, we sat in the meetings and we watched film on the left tackles that we were interested in getting. And Mike got up and said, I want Andre Dillard. That's my guy. And again, we decided that, hey, we're going to work this out together. So we said, you know what? Mike says they can coach him up, so let's do it. But we didn't want anything to do with him. And again, that's all private. That's the, Miss Amy, I know you hired me to work with Mike Vrabel, but he's a stooge. Let me go hire a coach. Let me go get a San Francisco guy, and let's go do this San Francisco style. Trust me. This is what's in the best interest of our team. That's the second choice. Throw Vrabel under the bus to the owner. Then there's the third choice. The third choice is using the media to launch a war publicly against Vrabel. Now, it's not going to be, Rand Carthon says Mike Vrabel wanted Andre Dillard. That'll get him fired. That's not that. But it would be more so that sources are telling ESPN that kind of thing. Sources inside the Titans say, just like those sources told Diana Rossini that Saturday night before the Miami Dolphins game, Mike Vrabel went to dinner and had a tomahawk steak and talked about the 2-point conversion play. And the easiest shot for Rand Carthon to do that with Vrabel when it comes to the sources would be to throw him under the bus about draft night, the coaching staff, or like one particular player that sources could say Mike Vrabel really, really, really wanted over what Rand Carthon wanted to do. If there was a report that came out, because if you think that what happened on draft night, where the Titans got absolutely hoodwinked, if you think that the owner was okay with that, if you think being embarrassed on national television while your division rival drafted their quarterback of the future, if you think that sat well with them, you're crazy. My guess is there was a lot of talk about what happened on draft night. Well, what if sources inside the Titans come out and say ownership was not happy with Mike Vrabel after draft night when Diana Rossini reported that the Titans were interested in moving up for a quarterback? Sources were not happy with the leaking of information to ESPN. Sources inside the Titans, that's what I'm talking about. So again, Rand's not going to Amy and saying, Amy, you got to get rid of, Miss Amy, you've got to get rid of Mike Vrabel. He's not going to, let me go get my own coach and we'll turn things around the way Houston turned things around when they let Nick Caserio get D'Amico Ryans, or the way Jacksonville turned things around when they got rid of Urban Meyer and they let Trent Baalke go get Doug Peterson, or the way that Indianapolis has turned it around with Shane Steichen still with Chris Brown. Let me do that, and I'll turn it around for you the way that they've turned it around. That is different than, again, using the media to launch a war on Vrabel, where all of a sudden we find out sources close to the Titans say that Mike Vrabel adamantly wanted Andre Dillard over Rand Carthon's objections. Because the thing about reports like that, and this is what used to drive Floyd crazy, is that once it gets out there, it can't be unsaid. In fact, we already saw that in which Rand Carthon was a total victim when it came to Greg Bedard and then later PK kind of saying, like, I've heard things about Rand. What are they? Well, I don't have enough information to be able to tell you what they are, but I've heard. And it's like, now that's in our brains, right? I've had people that have come up to me and they're like, yeah, I heard that Rand Carthon was a minority hire that was forced on the Titans. I'm like, yeah, that, kind of debunk that a little bit. But again, once it's said, it can't be unsaid. So those are the three choices. You're Rand Carthon. Again, we're not Team Titan. We're Team Rand right now. We're Rand's agents. Hitch your wagon to Vrabel. Go to Amy and throw him under the bus. or throw him under the bus publicly? Which one do you do? And see, I don't know what his level of confidence in Mike Vrabel is. If I was his agent and he said, Jared, I'm telling you, I know right now Mike Vrabel is a moron. There is no way that we can win with him running this program. I mean, I've seen what Kyle did when we were running things in San Francisco, and I mean, Mike, this guy's a moron. Well, then we are going to pick between option 2 or 3 because I'm not going to let you hitch your career to somebody that you think is a moron. And this is very fascinating. And I've always said this about the commission, right? Which is, at the beginning, it was so easy. It was, oh, yeah, it doesn't matter who has final say. We'll work on this together. We'll collaborate. We'll this, we'll that. I said that works if you win. If you win, it's perfect. Because then it's like, boy, I'll tell you, Rand did a great job finding us that great pass rusher, Arden Key. I mean, most teams thought he was a backup or situational guy. He's been the next Javon Curse. What a great job. And then Rand will say, I'll tell you, Coach Vrabel has done a great job. All we do is just get the players. They're the guys that are putting them in the right spots, and they're just so great. It's just been such a wonderful partnership. It's almost, psychotic the way that that's not the right word. It's almost just been psychic the way that we've been able to communicate with each other. But when you lose, it's either your fault or his fault. So I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what Rand should do because I don't know how Rand feels. But he's going to pick one of the 3. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025. And if I could give some Rand advice on this, about which side to be on. Again, the 3 choices here when it comes to Vrabel and it comes to the future in the organization and everything else. If I could give Rand Carthon some advice, my advice would be this. What would Mike Vrabel do to you? What did Mike Vrabel do to the last guy? 615-737-1025 is the phone number if you want to weigh in. 615-737-1025, Stillman and Company. We roll along here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. By the way, Chase and Big Joe at 11 a.m. or between 9 and 11 a.m. tomorrow. Chase and Big Joe will be giving away tickets to see Kenny Chesney and Zach Brown Band at Nissan Stadium on Saturday, August 3rd. Each weekday winner will also qualify to win a $250 Electronic Express gift card. That is tomorrow morning between 9 and 11 with the Chase and Big Joe Show.
final say on the roster, Randy?
I don't think that matters because I think the word and what we truly believe here is collaborating. I think all that comes down to, in my opinion, is a matter of ego. Mike and I, we're here to work together, and we're going to bring the people in here that we see fit, and we're not going to see it the same way all the time, but he and I will have the mutual respect to be able to work through that, and we'll get the right people in here.
That was Rand Carthon when he got hired. Now a question would be, Rand, what if you don't believe in Mike anymore? Then does it matter if you have final say on the roster? And we don't know what Rand thinks one way or another. But again, he's got three choices. Choice one, commit to the commission, and your career is tied to Mike Vrabel. Choice number two, go to the owner and throw Vrabel under the bus. Choice number three, use the media and launch a war of public opinion against Mike Vrabel. Those are the choices. Now, I think the honorable thing that a lot of people would say, well, that would not be honorable to go to the owner, and that would not be honorable to go to the media and say, you know what else isn't honorable? For Mike Vrabel to act like a total pissy pants when the Titans traded A.J. Brown when he knew it was coming. That was done on purpose. Phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Mike from Nashville. He sends in a text that I actually am very excited to address. Mike from Nashville says, it would be fun to watch a Jared Stillman-owned team. We would have 3 head coaches in 1 year, 2 general managers in 1 year, and all the players cut at least once per year. I got into the same argument yesterday at the Predators game with Joe. And I'm like, I think I would be a really, really understanding owner. You see, the difference between me as a talk show host and me as an owner is that as a talk show host, it is a daily opinion evaluation, right? Like, a lot of people probably think that they want to fire Mike Vrabel. A lot of people probably in the orbit of Amy Adams Strunk think they should fire Mike Vrabel. But they're not going to voice their opinions. And she's not going to voice her opinion until she's ready to fire Mike Vrabel. Me, I'm voicing my opinion every day. It is the definition of transparency, of me just telling you what I think. But also, everybody thinks I'm quick to fire. And I don't think that's true. You want to know the last time before Monday that I called for a Titans head coach to be fired? The Titans had lost a game against a Miami Dolphin team. This was the Monday after the Titans had lost a game to a Miami Dolphin team quarterbacked by Ryan Tannehill. That's how long ago it was. It was Ken Wisenhunt's second year. The Titans, and I was already started to have enough with Wisenhunt. The Titans had a home game against Miami in which Miami was playing with an interim coach who happened to be Dan Campbell, playing with Dan Campbell as their interim coach, and they beat the ever-living crap out of the Titans, including getting Mariota hurt, and then Wisenhunt putting him back in the game. And then Wisenhunt threw the challenge flag and said, on a turnover in which they lost a timeout because you can't challenge that. And at that point, I was like, enough's enough. Get him out of here. That is the last time I have called for a Titans coach to be fired. So I would think that 8 years, is that 8 years? 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. 8 years. In 8 years, I have not called for the Titans to fire the coach. I've been on the radio for 8 years and have called for one Titans coach to be fired. Well, I guess now 2, and one Predators coach to be fired. And guess what? I was right about both of them. I mean, let's go over it. Ian, was I right about Ken Wisenhunt?
Yeah, he was pretty bad.
Was I right about David Poyle and John Hines?
Maybe.
Was I right about Craig Aukerman?
Most likely.
So you guys think that when I call for someone to be, you think that I just get on here every day and say, fire this guy, fire that. That's not true. That is not true. It got bad with John Robinson, and I didn't call for them to fire him. I certainly did not call for them to fire Mike Mularkey. I thought that was crazy talk. Hadn't won a playoff game in 15 years. You win a playoff game and fire the coach? What? What planet are we living on? So I get it. I'm sure there's a lot of people that think like Mike from Nashville, that if I owned a team, I'd fire the coach every day. And that's not true. That is not true. I have always believed on the radio, what happens is we talk about firing people all the time. We don't ever say, they should until we cross the red line. And every time we say it, or I should say every time I say it, Ian, don't I always say whenever I call for a coach to be fired that like I'm crossing the red line here?
Usually, yep.
I mean, I make it like it is well documented because I know an owner cannot fire the coach and then 2 weeks later say, oh, that was a great idea not to do that. But I know a lot of people think that I fire the coach every day, and that's just blatantly not true. And again, 8 years, one Predators coach, and I was right about that. One Titans coach, and I was right about that until this one. And I'm right about Jerry Stackhouse, too. So I just wanted to just throw that out there. All right, Team Ran, what do you do? One texter, Chip from Mount Juliet, says Rand needs to bring in his own coach and staff. No question, Vrabel is in it for himself. So if that's the case and you're advising Rand, what are you choosing? Choice 2, go to Amy and throw Vrabel under the bus and say, hey, look, let me go bring in Johnny Joe from San Francisco. It could be the OC in Miami, who a lot of people are high on. It could be Slowick from the Texans, who I'm high on. Whatever, let me bring in my San Francisco guy, and we'll get her done. Which is exactly what she heard from John Robinson when it came to Mike Vrabel. Let me go get my New England guy, and we'll get her done. Texter into the text line says, with A.J. Brown gone and John Robinson out as general manager, it's going to be the Ken Wisenhunt era days. I don't think it's ever going to be that bad. I mean, again, you went 3-20 in the Wisenhunt era. I don't think it's ever going to be that bad. I think right now it's kind of more like the Munchak days. Just more like the Munchak days with a little bit more drama. Because Vrabel is not as even-keeled as Mike Munchak. Jacob says, option 2, going to Amy and throwing Vrabel under the bus gets Rand fired. Option 3 is terribly stupid and such a reach. That being, again, sources close to the Titans say that Mike Vrabel, blah, 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 draft night, Diana Rossini, blah, blah, blah. Jacob says, awful take. I mean, Ian, is there any other choice other than the 3 options I laid out?
I mean, I don't think so. Nothing that really comes to mind right off the bat.
I mean, so if you think that option 2 gets Rand fired, and again, we're sitting here talking to Rand saying, hey, man, here are your options. Like, you can go with the status quo, and you're hitching your career to Mike Vrabel. Because once you get fired, you're probably not getting another job in the NFL. Like, Tom Telesco just got fired from the Chargers. I don't think we'll ever see Tom Telesco get another job. Just like Doug Whaley's not getting another job. Just like Mark Dominic isn't getting another job. And I think Mark Dominic is a brilliant freaking dude. And I don't see anybody. I've told you, Thomas Dimitrov in Atlanta built it up, brought it down, built it back up, then tried to hang on, that Super Bowl I think they could never really get over, and then he got fired. I think Thomas Dimitrov is a great general manager. Nobody's interested in hiring him again. GMs don't get second chances. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025. We got a lot of phones to get into here on the program. Plus, there's one thing that there's one team that was in the exact same situation as you. And somehow they figured out what apparently we're not allowed to hold the Titans accountable to figuring out. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Those are my guys. Hiller's Cash for the Holidays promotion is back, and they're giving away cash for the holidays with select purchases. Hiller wants to make sure every child experiences the joy of Christmas this year, so they're donating $50 in Toys for Tots with every tankless water heater purchase. And giving away a $250 Visa gift card with each unit. Get a $500 Visa gift card when you buy select new HVAC systems, or get a $500 Visa gift card with the purchase of any new whole home generator. And these purchases all have great financing options with low monthly payments. These deals are only available until the end of the year, so schedule today at happyhiller.com.
It does seem like Sean McVay is enjoying himself much more this year than certainly last year. But let's look at the job that Les Snead, the general manager, has done. You mentioned some of the late round draft picks. it's late round draft picks, it's free agent signings at a very low cost in trades. So Kyron Williams, a fifth rounder from 2022, not this year, 2022, leads the league in rushing per game. Puka Nacua, you mentioned, fifth rounder this year, on pace to crush all of the rookie records. Kobe Turner, Byron Young, both of them lead all rookies in sacks, both of them third rounders. How about Ahkello Witherspoon, killing it at corner, minimum salary? Kevin Dotson, one of the top 3 guards in the NFL from PFF. That was a trade. This is how you win and get in contention very cheaply with a lot of young, good players, is you hit on them. And Les Snead certainly has done that for the Rams.
Ian Rappaport on NFL Network doing some source patting on the ass right there by telling us how great Les Snead has been in rebuilding the Rams. But it does seem like there's a lot of truth in what he's saying, right? They have third-round picks that, hey, they're leading the league in sacks for rookies. I'd say that's pretty good. So when I look at the Rams and I look at the Titans, when we talk about why the Titans aren't good, the chief excuse is that it's all John Robinson's fault, right? Like somebody said to me yesterday at the Preds game, they said, well, it's not fair to Ran Carthon because John Robinson traded away A.J. Brown. To which I said, if John Robinson didn't trade away A.J. Brown, Ran Carthon wouldn't be the general manager of the Tennessee Titans. Now, would he? So there's a little give and take here. But the Rams are the most like you. And here's why. Because the L.A. Rams were really, really good in 2021. They were not elite. Even though they won the Super Bowl, that team was not an elite team. That was not a Brady Patriots team. That was not a Manning Colts team. They were not an elite team. They had a great all-time player, just like you. They had a great wide receiver, just like you. Now, you've missed on your first-round picks. They just haven't had them because they used their first-round picks on players. They traded them for Jalen Ramsey and Matthew Stafford. And so with the Rams, it caught up to them when Andrew Wentworth, their left tackle, retired and Matthew Stafford got hurt. And they were stuck. They didn't have picks. Traded them for Von Miller and all these kind of things. Now, they got their Super Bowl and you didn't, which is a massive, again, big difference there. And again, I blame Tannehill for that because I do think the Titans would have beaten the Rams in the Super Bowl had they faced each other the way the Titans kicked that ass earlier in the season. But the Rams have rebuilt their team over those 2 years. Last year was bad. The Rams have a lower payroll this year than you do. The Rams took all their resources, pushed them in the middle, and went for it in 2021. And good for them because they got it. But they have had to rebuild their team. Now, again, they still have Stafford. They still have Donald. And Cooper Kupp, we talk about the wide receiver. He's been out more than he's been in, so factor him like AJ. How have the Rams rebuilt themselves? The Rams took a guard in the second round who by every metric out there that judges offensive linemen has been better than your 11th overall draft choice. They drafted a pass rusher in the third round who's better than any pass rusher you've got this year. They drafted in the fifth round a wide receiver that out of nowhere on day one basically replaced Cooper Kupp's production. And you just had to put Nick Westbrook-Akine on IR, and I don't know what that means for you. So how is it that the Rams, in the exact same position, have been able to build up their team, but you can't and have to make excuses for your team? And the answer to me is simple. It is that the Rams' system for finding players, for drafting players, and then for taking the players they've drafted and having a vision for how they're supposed to be used is better than yours. I.e., they see Puka Nacua, they have an idea in their head for how they're going to use Puka Nacua, and then they go out on Sunday and they use Puka Nacua. You draft Kyle Phillips, and you have an idea in your head for how you're going to use Kyle Phillips, and then he can't catch a punt. Now, he could catch punts in college. I don't know why he can't catch them in the NFL. And again, that might be coaching. I don't know. For years, I was told it wasn't Craig Aukerman's fault that they couldn't catch punts, but I'm sure they'll start blaming him like they've been blaming John Robinson. I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get how the Rams can rebuild in the exact same situation you're in. They can rebuild, and they're competing for the playoffs. And here you are before Christmas, and you're out. And everybody has to make an excuse all the time. Again, the 11th overall draft choice is a guard who right now is not playing that well. And I love, too, everybody getting on me about it, saying, it's just one game against the Texans. Ian, have we been talking about Skoronski not being good enough for one game?
No, more than one game.
It's been a whole season. I mean, like midway through the first half of the season, to me, it was either the Tampa Bay game or the Jacksonville game where I was like, okay, we got a problem at left guard. And then the metric websites didn't say it, so people didn't believe it. And then all of a sudden you started seeing it more and more, and it culminated in the game on Sunday where Skoronski was a disaster. They drafted a guard in the second round, and he's better right now. Guess why? I bet you it's because their coaching is better. I bet if you put Peter Skoronski on their line, they would use him better than you're using Peter Skoronski. I bet you if you put Tajay Spears in their backfield, I bet they'd use him better than you use Tajay Spears. Hell, they're the team that you had to trade up in the draft in order to get in front of so they couldn't take Will Levis. Imagine Will Levis as the backup quarterback of the LA Rams behind Matthew Stafford with Sean McVay coaching him. Woof. He'd go out there and light it up. And you know that. So I'm just saying, this is where the excuses piss me off. Well, John Robinson missed on Caleb Farley. How can you expect them to be any good? Well, the Rams didn't have a pick that year either. And the Rams didn't have a pick the year before that, and they didn't have a pick the year after that. But they found a way. They've managed. They draft well in the third round, in the fourth round, in the fifth round. Meanwhile, here, you've got a sixth-round left tackle that can't block. You've got a first-round, 11th overall guard who played tackle in college. Clearly, I think, I could be wrong about this. My guess is if you stuck Skoronski at left tackle, he'd probably be better than Duncan. But can you play him? No, can't do that. So that's where the excuses and all that, it just drives me crazy. Because it's like, why are they doing it? Why are the Rams able to do this? You can't turn things around in 1 year, Jared. Then why have the Texans done it? Somebody explain this to me. I'm not sure I understand. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in. 615-737-1025 here on the program. We're going to, let's get to some phones here on Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game.
Who else isn't practicing?
It's a long list, buddy. You'll have to take a peek when you get out there. Jeff won't be out there. Burks won't be out there. Hooker won't be out there. Nick Westbrook won't be out there. Wesco won't be out there. Brew won't be out there. Brunskill won't be out there. Levis won't be out there. SMB won't be out there. Don't interrupt me, Kayla. I was.
There you go. That was earlier today. Vrabel with all the people that weren't practicing. And the one that shocked me on that list was Burks. I mean, he's like, yeah, Burks isn't practicing. What the hell happened to Burks? Burks is hurt again? Is it something that's been by? I don't know, whatever. I didn't think anything about Nick Westbrook-Akine not practicing, and the Titans have announced today that Nick Westbrook-Akine has been placed on IR, and I saw that, and I was like, dang. Like, that kind of sucks for him. And he is on an expiring contract, which means he may not be back with the Tennessee Titans. That may be it for Nick Westbrook-Akine. So, Ian, I can go one of two ways with this. Wes in Clarksville texted, NWI just got put on injured reserve. What happened? The answer is, I don't know. But I have two thoughts.
Hand injury, I saw.
A hand injury. Well, he's had a little bit of a hard time catching the ball lately, so maybe that's something to it. Who knows? But I have one of two ways I can go. There's the sentimental way or there's the reality way. Which one do you want to start with?
Well, let's start with the reality, and then we'll go to sentimental.
The reality is that the Titans need better players than Nick Westbrook-Akine at wide receiver next year. I mean, Nick Westbrook-Akine is a solid player who can be like a special teams guy, like a gunner on special teams or on the kickoff coverage unit or something like that, that in a pinch should be playing wide receiver. The amount of wide receiver that Nick Westbrook-Akine has played over the last 3 years is indicative of the talent that they've had on this team, which is not very good. And I'm just calling it how it is. Nick Westbrook-Akine cannot make contested catches and he can't run. So I don't see a whole lot of upside there when it comes to Nick Westbrook-Akine. And I know he's going to catch the ball, but he doesn't. I mean, even that one that he technically caught the other day that set up the first touchdown, that was a pass that he basically dropped, and he shouldn't have dropped it. He dropped a touchdown last week against the Dolphins. When we talk about why the red zone offense is so bad, I said it's very simple. You can't run the football because you can't block, and when you get down to the red zone, there's less space, so they can put more fat guys on the field, more defensive tackles, and then linebackers and safeties and things like that. So you can't block the run, so you can't run the ball, and you can't make contested catches. There's one guy on your team that can consistently make contested catches, and it is DeAndre Hopkins, and he'll probably get double or triple teamed down there. So that's why you're not scoring in the red zone consistently. Is you can't catch the ball. And Nick Westbrook-Akine is part of that. He also can't run. He's just not a burning speed threat in the NFL. Not a bad player. And certainly the number one thing that he gave the Titans over the years that they have not got from other guys is reliability. He is reliable. If they brought him back on a similar contract to this year, I think it's like $1.2 million, the veteran minimum. If they brought him back on that next year and had him earn a spot in training camp, I wouldn't be completely against it. But the Titans really do need to be better than Nick Westbrook-Akine at wide receiver. Now, can I be sentimental?
Please.
Nick Westbrook-Akine played his ass off for this football team. And over the last couple of years, there has been a lot of stuff that has happened, and a lot of guys have been hurt. And there has been a lot of talk about whether or not it's the training staff or the coach or whatever. And a lot of the wide receivers have been hurt and been hurt significantly. Burks and AJ and Julio, and I can go on and on of all these wide receivers. Corey Davis and Nick Westbrook-Akine, for the most part, has answered the bell every time. I mean, he's had some screw-ups, running short of the sticks in Pittsburgh in 21, but for the most part, he's probably been one of the more reliable players on the Titans. And I don't think that that should be discounted, that he was a reliable player. They just now need better players who are a little bit more reliable. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Mike says, do you ever talk about the scouting from the Titans? They rightly fired John Robinson, but nobody else. That's not exactly true. Ryan Cowden is no longer in the organization. I guess Monty Ossenfort doesn't count because he got a better job. But I'm not sure that Monty Ossenfort would have kept his job had he not gotten the Cardinals job. But, again, to your point, a lot of the guys are the same. They rightly fired John Robinson, but nobody else. There's a serious problem somewhere in the organization, and until that's fixed, nothing really matters. Let's wait to see one more cycle out. Because, again, Rand gets hired in January, and he brings in Chad Brinker kind of early on, but a lot of these guys' contracts are through drafts, and so there's a little bit more of how much time it takes for them to make these kind of decisions one way or another. But I agree, if the player evaluating is so bad, then why are all the player evaluators still there? I also think, though, and Paul keeps saying this over and over again, which makes me think that somebody in the organization told him this, that John Robinson locked himself in his office and basically just decided things himself. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if he leaned in on those guys or didn't. I couldn't tell you. But that's the narrative now. And, of course, this goes back to, like, which way does Rand pick? Does Rand go to Amy and say, hey, Mike is a terrible coach? Does Rand throw Vrabel under the bus publicly, with sources close to the Titans, or the way Vrabel did on draft night with the A.J. Brown thing? Or does Rand go status quo? And it wouldn't surprise me if some of the guys that were on the staff in the scouting department after the fact were telling the owner and telling the coach, I told J-Rob not to do that, but he didn't listen. And whether or not that's true, I mean, it could be, it could not be, whatever it may be. Texture says, Nick Westbrook-Akine gets a bad rap because he's had to play wide receiver 1 or 2, and he is just a solid wide receiver 4. The problem with that, though, is that a solid wide receiver 4 has to contribute significantly in the kicking game, which he did his first 2 years here, but now he's not so much of a special teams player, and so that makes you have to be more valuable than whatever it may be. I guess when I talked about owning the football team, a lot of people are here for it. Chris in Nashville says, I think Jared could do a better job last year than Rand did. Thank you. Josh says, sign me up for the Fighting Stillmans. I just think that the idea that I would own the football team the same way that I, give a daily opinion on the radio is kind of crazy talk, right? Like, again, this is like a daily report card show, whatever. Like, if Amy Adams Strunk switched jobs with me, would she just sit there? This is what I think you guys think Amy Adams Strunk would do if we just changed jobs. Nothing. You see what I'm saying? Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, you guys, what would she be like as a talk show host if she had to give her opinion every day? That kind of thing. It's just a little different job. I think I'd be a good sports owner. If I ever marry somebody who's like the heiress to, trying to think of like what's a massive company, the Marriott family. Although, aren't they a little crazy? I don't know.
I'm not sure.
If I ever married like some like heiress and we had billions and billions and billions of dollars like on Succession, I would be like, can we please buy the Atlanta Braves? And the thing about the Atlanta Braves, they're a publicly traded company, so we could pull the Elon Musk and we could offer them way more money than they're worth, and then they'd have to sell it to us because it's a publicly traded company. And you have to benefit the stockholders. So if I got to the point to where, like if I married Warren Buffett's granddaughter, if he has one, I'd be like, can we please buy the Atlanta Braves? Please buy the Atlanta Braves. And I think I'd do a good job. Rob says, when Amy fired John Robinson last year, she said about the timing she didn't see the point in dragging things out anymore, which honestly makes me believe she has zero intention of firing Mike Vrabel. After a loss like this past Sunday, he still has a job. And I'm worried this is another Jeff Fisher deal where the coach just has the owner in awe. I don't think Bud Adams was in awe of Jeff Fisher. I know that because Floyd told me that he saved Jeff Fisher's job numerous times. I'm not necessarily calling for his job, but the coach has obviously been terrible, says Rob. So I can't tell you how Amy feels one way or another, but there is a benefit to keeping Mike Vrabel. Number one, if you fire Mike Vrabel right now, you have to have somebody finish out the season, and then that means you have to pay them more money. And I don't even know what coach on this staff would be qualified to be a head coach, even on an interim basis. So that I would have a hard time with. And then secondly, there probably would be a market for trading Mike Vrabel at the end of the year. So if you fire him right now, which I wouldn't even do if me and the Marriott heiress own the football team, I would not fire him after that Texans game. I wouldn't have fired him. I just would know that at the end of the year, one way or another, he's not going to be my coach. But he has real value. I mean, a trade is legit. So that there is a reason in keeping him. When she's like, I didn't see a reason in keeping John, nobody was going to call up and dial up and demand the services of John Robinson. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Boy, I have started a controversy. And to me, this isn't even controversial. It's called using your eyes. And yet everybody else wants to make excuse after excuse after excuse. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical Studios. So there is some news that doesn't have to do with the Titans, but I think it is actually fascinating and could end up having to do with the Titans. And you're thinking, wait a minute, what's that mean? So Arthur Smith is on the hot seat in Atlanta. And the owner in Atlanta, Arthur Blank, sat down with PBS. I mean, look, no disrespect to PBS. They used to show Arthur when I was a kid, and I liked that show. But PBS, Arthur Blank sat down with them. And this guy, he was asking direct questions, like the kind of questions I wish we could get consistently at the press conferences covering the Titans. These were the questions with Arthur Blank. And, of course, the number one thing is, what about Arthur Smith?
So in 2024, is Arthur Smith going to be your head football coach for your team?
Well, when we're committed to Coach Smith. We're going to play these last 3 games. We play them to win them, and we'll let the season play out and go from there. Obviously, this has not been the kind of year we expected, and you would hear that first from Coach Smith. You'd hear it from our fans, you hear it from our players. So we understand that. We understand the challenges. So at the end of the year, we'll, assess where we are and go from there.
Ooh-wee! I mean, Arthur Blank, when he sits down with, again, PBS, he knows that he's going to be asked about the coach, right? I mean, and he says right then and there on record, we'll see. I went to the Preds game a couple of weeks ago with a 7-year-old, and they saw a giant advertisement for an icy. And the 7-year-old says to me, "Can I have an icy?" And you know what I said? I said, "We'll see." That's the one that we'll see. Woo-wee! Now, Arthur Blank was asked if Arthur Smith has to make the playoffs in order to keep his job. Here's what Arthur Blank said.
Does he have to get to the playoffs to come back?
No, I don't. I mean, that was never really a requirement. The requirement was that we have a more competitive team this year, a winning team this year. And I think that, through this part of the season, it's been mixed, quite honestly. And that's what I think, that's what the coach would say. And Arthur is a very, very honest, he looks at himself very critically. So he's not, he comes from a beautiful family that has great values. And he reflects those values in his leadership as best he can. So we'll see how the season plays out and go from there.
We'll see. Doesn't sound great for old Arthur down there in Atlanta. Now, what's that have to do with here? Well, you obviously know that if Arthur Smith gets fired as the head coach in Atlanta, there are going to be a lot of Titan fans who want Arthur Smith back as the offensive coordinator. And now Mike Vrabel's got a problem he's got to deal with. Arthur Smith was incredibly popular as the offensive coordinator here with the Tennessee Titans. In fact, I think most of us, myself included, I think we're shocked that Arthur Smith has struggled so mightily on the offensive side of the football with the Falcons. Specifically, we talked about this yesterday, but specifically at the quarterback position. So now, let's think about what Mike Vrabel does here. You're Mike Vrabel, and Arthur Smith gets fired. What do? If this were last year, it would have been simple, right? Todd Downing gets fired, Arthur Smith back in as offensive coordinator, and on you go. The scheme stays the same. The fans are happy. There's a comfort level there, so on and so forth. But now Mike Vrabel has replaced Todd Downing with Tim Kelly. And Tim Kelly has already changed the scheme and the terminology. So going back to Arthur would be overhauling everything again. And it's a scheme that Tajay Spears and Peter Skoronski have never played in, and Will Levis has played in it in college, but it might be different here in the pros. So you changed everything to go to Tim Kelly, and now you're going to have to change everything to go back to Arthur, when if this were last year, you could just keep everything in place. Plus, as far as Tim Kelly's concerned, I know a lot of people may disagree with me on this, including the owner, and that's ultimately who would decide something like this, I would assume. I don't think Tim Kelly has done a fireable job this season. I actually think Tim Kelly, outside of the Cleveland game, which I think was his worst game plan of the season, I think Tim Kelly's been pretty good this year. Even the things everybody hated last week, I kind of understood. Now, the Wildcat stuff and the reverses to Burks, I thought were freaking stupid. Just stupid. But I don't think Tim Kelly, I just, I hate when football people do this. Like the football people are sitting there and they say, oh yeah, every time a fan yells about the coordinator or the play calling, they don't know what they're talking about. They just get mad because it didn't work. And I think that's an incredibly lazy way for football people to just shoot down the idea that maybe they're not right all the time. But I do think that a lot of the anger at Tim Kelly is, I just think fans around here are going to hate the offensive coordinator no matter who it is. Unless they're lighting up the scoreboard like Arthur was. So if I don't think that Tim Kelly has done a fireable job, what do you think Mike Vrabel thinks? I mean, Mike Vrabel might think that Tim Kelly's greatest offensive coordinator who ever lived. That's how he treats his coordinators. His coordinators can do no wrong. That 2020 defense was so freaking bad that it was almost a crime that they promoted Shane Bowen. But he's Vrabel's guy. How long did we have to talk about Craig Ackerman for? Finally, it got so bad that there was nothing Vrabel could have done about it, and we still don't know if it was the owner that put the hit out on Craig Ackerman or if the coach decided to do it himself. So if we know he is in love with Ackerman and he's in love with Bowen and he was in love with Downing, the truth is Mike Vrabel always loves his guys and he's not going to want to fire Tim Kelly. So on one hand, you got Vrabel, who's already kind of overhauled the offense with a new scheme and new terminology, brought in his guy in Tim Kelly, and now Arthur Smith hits the market. What do you do? And I don't know what Vrabel does. Because again, I believe that Vrabel, if I think Tim Kelly's doing a non-fireable job, I definitely think Vrabel thinks he's doing a non-firing job. But how can Vrabel not bring back Arthur Smith? Especially knowing that any hiccups that they have on offense, if Arthur gets fired in Atlanta, any hiccups that they have on offense next year will be met with a, Arthur Smith wouldn't have done that. They could have had Arthur Smith. And I know that because I see you guys when it comes to Jim Schwartz. And how much, again, I think Schwartz clearly had an impact on defense. I just saw what it was before him and have seen what it is after him. I mean, I think he had an impact. But there is no doubt, every game that they play like crap on offense, like last week, every fan of the Tennessee Titans will be saying, Arthur Smith wouldn't have done that. And so, if I'm Mike Vrabel, knowing how much Mike Vrabel loves his boys, I desperately want Atlanta to keep Arthur Smith as their head coach. Because if Arthur stays as the head coach in Atlanta, then I don't have this problem, right? Like, yeah, I think if the season ended today, I think Howdling's out. I think the strength coach is probably out because of more injuries, and I just think that they'll say enough's enough. So I think he's out. I think Howdling's out. I think Bowen's probably out. And I don't think Kelly's out unless the owner makes Vrabel fire Kelly. But I don't know if Mike Vrabel can pass up the opportunity to hire Arthur Smith when that's the only good offensive coordinator he's ever had. And I can guarantee you, Vrabel probably thinks Arthur's success was more about Corey Davis and A.J. Brown and a Derrick Henry in his prime and Lawan at left tackle and Saffold at left guard and Jones at center and Nate Davis. And he probably thinks it was more about that than it was Arthur's a genius. But that's not how his fan base is going to interpret that. So the best case scenario for Vrabel is that the Atlanta Falcons keep Arthur Smith as their head coach. They fire him. Now he's got a decision to make. I overhaul the entire offense. I fire a guy that's one of my homies, and Will Levis has another offensive coordinator, or my fans go bananas the second something inevitably goes wrong. And I don't know what Mike Vrabel's going to do there. And then the question would be this. Who do you think's the better coach? Arthur Smith or Tim Kelly? Ian, who do you think's the better coach? Arthur Smith or Tim Kelly?
I'm going to lean Arthur Smith.
I think most people around here would say Arthur Smith is the better coach. And so if Vrabel decides Tim Kelly's the better coach and he says that, these fans are going to go nuts. And that is not a comfortable position to be in. I mean, I'm just going to tell you that right now. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Plus, I do wonder if there's a little bit of a Tannehill element to this and what it means for him with Arthur and what it means for you and him. We'll do that next. Hey, tomorrow is your chance to participate in Preds Pick to Click. If you correctly guess a Preds player that scores a goal in the Preds game tomorrow night, you win a pair of tickets to an upcoming Preds home game. Participate with Robbie and Rex Road tomorrow morning at 8:45. Preds Pick to Click brought to you by TJ Anderson, Homes of Benchmark Realty. That's my agent. List your home with TJ to get your home seen, heard, and sold.
quarterback situation's been tough this year.
It has been tough, yeah. We certainly, had high hopes for Desmond Ridder, and he's done a lot of good things for us this year, but, he would be the first to tell you, he hasn't been the kind of consistent performer that, we'd like him to be. And in this business, the NFL business or the business of college ball, you have turnovers. It's a very tough thing to overcome.
There you go. That was Arthur Blank talking to Georgia Public Broadcasting, part of PBS.
Why are you hating on PBS and NPR?
I'm not hating on PBS. I told you they used to have Arthur on PBS.
All the Arthurs. Yeah, it's just a big Arthur love fest over there.
That is true. Except for Arthur Smith.
All the Arthurs. Just put them all on there.
He, not so much. Arthur Blank, yes. Arthur the Aardvark, yes. Arthur Smith, maybe not so much. So they write in The Athletic, Josh Kendall, the guy who covers the Falcons, says that many of the offensive problems can be attributed to Ritter's constant mistakes, which I am kind of shocked by, saying that Desmond Ritter's the issue, and basically that Arthur Smith's commitment to Desmond Ridder is probably, if he gets fired, going to be the reason that he does. Because Arthur Smith committed to Desmond Ridder. And I'll say this. I've watched, again, when sitting down and saying I'm going to watch the Falcons, I've watched 2 games. I watched him play Tampa Bay, and Ridder almost lost in that game. And then I watched the Titans game, and he played one half, and he absolutely lost them that game.
What do they mean by committed to him? Like drafted him?
Well, I mean, I look at it like this. You know how we love doing the quarterback carousel during the offseason? Basically kills like 30 minutes on a Friday. Mm-hmm. Where we, spin the wheel and it's like, all right, the Jets, I'm going to go with so-and-so because blah, 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 blah. All right, the Falcons, I'm going to go. I had the Falcons going with Sam Darnold. And I just, Sam Darnold finished the season really strongly last year. And I figured he would be kind of like Baker, like in line for a starting job somewhere. And if not in line for a starting job, then a backup job with a starter who's kind of iffy. And then, have his opportunity. And so when they went with Taylor Heineke, who is like a true backup, I was like, I guess Arthur believes that Desmond Ridder is the truth. So if Arthur thinks Desmond Ridder is the truth, then he must be the truth because I trust Arthur's opinion at the quarterback position implicitly. And that's been a disaster.
That's
now,
fair.
There's kind of a sentiment that Ryan Tannehill could be on his way to Atlanta, which makes a ton of sense. Here's the problem, though. If you're Arthur Smith and you're trying to keep your job and you're talking to Arthur Blank and you're saying, okay, what can we do to figure out the quarterback position? Is Tannehill really the guy that's going to excite the loins, per se? I mean, we see where Tannehill ranks on these executive tiers with Mike Sando and whatnot. He got benched here. And not only that, the idea of, trust me, I worked with him with the Titans. I trust him. Probably isn't going to fly for Arthur since he's already played that card with Marcus. So I don't know what they're going to do. I am almost shocked by it. Phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. Mikey says Arthur Smith may be a better OC, but he is clearly not a good head coach, so give Tim Kelly a try. What does that mean? You're giving Tim Kelly a try right now. I'm just going to tell you right now. If the Atlanta Falcons fire Arthur Smith, I believe that 75% of Titan fans are going to want them to bring Arthur Smith back. I do not think the head coach is going to want to do that. But the head coach is going to have to live, and he will be on the hot seat next year. The head coach is going to have to live with every time the offense sputters at all next year, hearing Titan fans say, well, we could have had Arthur Smith. And that's not going to go over well. Like, that's not, if things don't, so you better be sure Tim Kelly's going to be the guy, or else you're getting fired over that decision. Caleb says Tim Kelly would be just fine with A.J. Brown and Corey Davis and those players, so we can't compare the two as is. But then he also says, I think we need to get away from the type of schemes we've been running the last 7 to 8 years. This is a new scheme. I don't think you guys understand what the word scheme means. Arthur Smith's scheme is not the same as Tim Kelly's. Somebody texted in yesterday and was like, Tim, when's the last time Tim Kelly's scheme won a Super Bowl? 30 years ago. I'm like, no. Tom Brady won the Super Bowl in 2018 running this scheme. To which the texter said, Brady was throwing the ball all over the field. Well, just because Tom Brady can do it with Rob Gronkowski and Will Levis can't with Chigakonkwo does not mean that it's not the same scheme. It is, in fact, the same scheme. The scheme that Arthur runs is the scheme that the 49ers run. It's the scheme that the Packers run. It's the scheme that the Rams run. It's the scheme that the Jets run. It's the scheme that half the teams in the league run. So when you say you want to get away from that, you're saying you want to get away from Kyle Shanahan's scheme. Crazy. Michael in Clarksville says, you act like Arthur Smith would even want to come back here. I mean, most guys like going places where they can turn their reputations around. Plus, Arthur probably knows that if he comes back here, he'll be well received, whereas other places, who knows? And then again, a lot of this may too depend on Levis, right? Like if Arthur had loved Levis and they did bring Levis in for a visit and they had the 7th overall pick and they knew that the Titans were trying to trade back into the first round to get Levis, if Arthur loved Levis, then he would have probably drafted Levis, but he loved Ritter and Ritter's terrible, so I don't know. Texter says, Arthur Smith uses Bijan Robinson as a decoy. I don't think he's really that good of a coach. Derrick Henry got him paid. I mean, I think he was a better coach than Todd Downing. And, again, I've seen Titan offensive coordinators the entire time they've been here. And I know what bad is. Norm Chow was bad. That was a bad offensive coordinator. Ken Wisenhunt and Jason Michael, they were bad. Terry Rubisky, I mean, I did not like it. Arthur was not that. Like, Arthur was good. And, I mean, if you're going to think that Arthur wasn't good and that those Patriots and Ravens game, go back to that Ravens playoff game, right? And you won, you pulled away because after your defense got a stop of Lamar Jackson in short yardage on a 4th down, Arthur Smith picked the perfect time to run a play-action pass with a max protection to get Khalif Raymond singled up for a deep ball touchdown. The exact same thing that they did against Indianapolis to seal the game there earlier in the year. When Arthur Smith was the offensive coordinator of the Titans, I remember watching games where I'd think to myself, whoa, like I was not, Tannehill looks one way, fakes that way, turns to the right. There's Jonnu Smith all by himself, nobody there. And every time you got to the red zone with Arthur Smith as the coach, it was a touchdown.
I do wonder if he would have to adjust without Derrick Henry in that running game.
I think he'd have to adjust more with the offensive line.
Well, for sure this year it would have been an issue, definitely. But, he was here when Henry was in his prime and they were running the ball and the play action was just butter. And I wonder, because, that's not going to be the same next year.
Dylan in Antioch is up next here on the program. Thank you for calling and waiting. What's up, Dylan?
Hey, Jared. Yeah, it's a good discussion. And personally, just as a Titans fan, I think I would want to keep going with Tim Kelly. I think he's shown that he's done some pretty good stuff with what he has, and he's pretty creative. I do believe a lot of Arthur's success came from Derek being able to run behind that really good offensive line with Saffold and Lewan and Davis and Jones.
So then why did Matt LaFleur not get the same results?
Yeah, and then he got a head coaching job. So, yeah, who knows with that. And, that opened it up for AJ and Corey Davis and Jonnu. And, I just don't like the idea of just going back to the well. And he's been a very bad, it's really bad in Atlanta. So, personally, as a fan, I'd just like to keep going with Tim Kelly. But
so what somebody does with someone, that doesn't bother me as a head coach. Thank you for your call. I don't care about that, right? Like Dan Quinn was a bozo with the Falcons there at the end, and he's an incredible defensive coordinator. So that doesn't bother me at all, what has gone on in Atlanta. I am perplexed by why he loved Desmond Ridder so much when Desmond Ridder has been so terrible. But I don't, the idea of, well, he's bad in Atlanta, so I don't care about that. But I don't believe that Arthur Smith was a product of the players that he had. Like, I think Arthur Smith made those players better, right? Like, as soon as Arthur Smith left, Tannehill was clearly different. In fact, Tannehill had never been as good as he was with Arthur Smith. With Arthur Smith, Ryan Tannehill was a Pro Bowler, the comeback player of the year, right there with Deshaun Watson for that last Pro Bowl spot the second year with Arthur Smith, and was like the most efficient passer in NFL history since Joe Montana. And you think Arthur was the one who benefited from that? Arthur was a good coach. I'm not saying that Arthur, again, is Midas and is going to come in here and make the Titans offense just sing. But to act like, oh yeah, no, I think Arthur. Nah, the reason why Arthur was good was because he had Derrick Henry. Matt LaFleur had Derrick Henry, and he put him third on the depth chart. So I don't know why he didn't get those results. Boy, I tell you, for a lot of people that were bitching about Tim Kelly on Sunday, a lot of you guys are defending him today. That, I think, is a little wild and crazy. 615-737-1025. Now, there's something that I've said that has angered a lot of people. But I only say it because it's true. And people only get mad about it because the truth hurts. And I know because everybody's got all these different excuses. We'll get to that coming up next here on Stillman and Company, Twice Daily. You know I love Twice Daily, and the 12 days of Christmas are back at Twice Daily. Get ready for 12 days of discounts and freebies. Plus, contests to win fun prizes and gift cards too. Download the app to register today. Twice Daily's made-to-order offerings allow you to get exactly what you want when you want it. Customize sandwiches with your preferred meats, cheeses, and get bagels with all the fixings to have snacks prepared for you the second you order. You make it yours, and they make it fresh. And if the Titans score in the last 2 minutes of either half on Sunday, if you're a loyalty member, and again, download that Twice Daily app to join the loyalty program, you get a free half sub in the app the following day. That's right. It's great. You just have to score in the last 2 minutes of either half. Get what you crave at Twice Daily. If you're looking for convenience, Twice Daily has you covered. Twice Daily, fresh all day. Trevor, is Peter Skoronski trending towards being a bust?
No, I don't think so. I think he actually is the only one, as you look at that offensive line, that you could say, yeah, okay, this guy's going to develop into an outstanding player for us. You've got no hope on any of the other guys. The best you could hope for is that they could develop into a pretty good backup. I think Dylan Radins at right tackle right now actually is showing signs of getting better to the point to where they might be able to rely on him as a pretty good backup. Brunskill at right guard, same way. Pretty good backup. The problem is if you've got them playing next to each other as starters, then things start to fall apart. But Skoronski, you could see his ability. You can see his potential. You can kind of get a feel for his future. Some of the things that happened to him that he's getting just excoriated for, I'm not really terribly worried about.
That was Trevor on our show yesterday, and I didn't like what I heard in that answer. Because, again, it's like, hey, is Skoronski's picked 11th? Is he trending towards being a bust? Well, he's the only one on the team that, might actually develop into a decent offensive lineman. Well, great. He was the 11th pick in the draft at guard. He shouldn't be developing into a great lineman. He should be a great lineman. If you draft a guard at 11, he should be great. And so what's happened is over the last couple of days, I have continued to bang the drum that the Titans have a Peter Skoronski problem right now. That when the Titans drafted Peter Skoronski with the 11th overall pick because they picked him for a non-premium position, the reality must be that he must be a great player now. And if he's not worth the 11th overall pick. Because you can get a guard in the 3rd round, in the 4th round, in the 5th round. So if you're going to draft him 11th overall, he better not just be developing into a decent player. He better be a freaking superstar. The GM, who was not prone to hyperbole, said if you draft a guard in the top 10, he ought to go right to the Pro Bowl and on his way to the Hall of Fame. Not one day he should develop into a starter. No. So they used the 11th overall pick on Peter. He has not been good in my opinion. And everybody has a different excuse for him. And this is how I know I'm right. Because, and I'm not saying Peter won't be a good player because I think the offensive line coach isn't worth a crap. And I'm not saying that Peter is not the best offensive lineman on the team because he probably is. And I'm not saying they should get rid of Peter or anything like that. But it was a bad draft pick. If you drafted a guard at 11 with all the freaking problems that you guys have on your team and you draft a guard at 11 and the best I can hope for is he might be good one day, or everybody has to make an excuse for him, and everybody's excuse is different. I also think everybody's expectation level is different. But the excuses are, well, it's not Peter's fault because the center stinks and the left tackle stink. By the way, who was the one that went freaking crazy when the Titans decided to give $4.3 million to a 270-pound center? But I hear this all the time, right? Oh, no, that's not his fault that the center stinks and the tackle stinks. That's one excuse. The second excuse was Peter was great. And then Peter had that appendectomy and he lost a bunch of weight. And so you can't blame him because he had the appendectomy. Then it's, no, Jared, he's actually doing well. He's developing. He's a good young player. He's going to be a superstar. Don't you see it? No, I do not see it. Show me where I can see that he's going to be a superstar. And then, again, that goes back to expectations, right? The expectation for me when a guard, a non-premium position that can be easily acquired in free agency or used with a 4th-round draft choice, the expectation at guard for me at 11 is not he becomes a superstar. It is he is already a superstar. And that's why people don't draft guards with the 11th overall pick. because they aren't superstars, and so they need more premium positions that help teams win games better. Did you see what Jackson Smith and Jigba did on Monday night? He won his team the game. Did you watch Zay Flowers on Sunday night? I didn't see the guard do that. And so I looked it up today. And look, I like Ramon Foster. I don't know him very well. But, just in the brief times, hey kind of thing. I like him. Don't have a problem with him at all. And he was a hell of a player. But he tweeted out this morning, he put out there on Twitter, and it just said, for your viewing pleasure. And he had Quentin Nelson, Joe Thuney, Matthew Bergeron, and Skoronski with Steve Avila and Cody Mock, who were all drafted. Now, again, Bergeron, second round. Avila, second round. Mock, I think, was in the third round. So not the 11th pick. The only guy who really compares to Skoronski on this list is Nelson, because Nelson was the 6th overall pick in the draft. Again, a high first-round pick. Nobody else was. Quentin Nelson had, and this is the info Ramon Foster got. I don't know where he got it from, but I trust his information. 703 snaps, 23 pressures, and 2 sacks. So 703 snaps, 23 pressures, 2 sacks. Skoronski, 421. So that is 60% of the amount of snaps that Quentin Nelson took his rookie year. 26 pressures. That's 3 more, with more than 200 snaps. 3 more. And 1 more sack. Peters allowed 3. Nelson allowed 2 as a rookie. 3 sacks. So again, in 60% of the snaps of what Quentin Nelson did his rookie year, which is the expectation for a guard that is drafted in the top half of the first round, Skoronski's already given up more pressures and more sacks. By the way, the other guys, Bergeron has played 100 more snaps and has given up 1 less pressure and 1 more sack. And I looked at Pro Football Focus today. Ian, are we allowed to use Pro Football Focus for this?
Well, maybe. What do they say?
So I had to do the counting because I don't pay for Pro Football Focus, and I'm never going to pay.
Yeah.
For that god-awful site, that misinformation site. But I do think, again, for the most part, I think that you're in kind of the zip code with some serious outliers one way or another. I certainly don't think this is the end-all be-all, but I went down their grades for guards, and I don't pay for it, so I had to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Peter is 71st. 71st in the NFL. And he was the 11th overall draft choice. You thought so much of him as a guard that you took him over your quarterback of the future. And according to PFF, again, I'm not the biggest PFF guy in the world, he's 71st. John Feliciano of the 49ers, 1 year, $2.25 million, by the way, ranks 3rd. You're paying Aaron Brewer double the amount of money that the guy who's 3rd is making, San Francisco. So when I bang on the drum about Peter, it's not necessarily about Peter not being a good enough player or that Peter won't be a good player or anything like that. It is me banging on the drum of incompetence that the Tennessee Titans display when they draft a lineman with the 11th overall pick, don't tell us what position he's going to play, probably because they're embarrassed to say guard, knowing that everybody's going to go crazy if they said it. Remember, Vrabel got asked after they picked him, and he said offensive line was going to be his position, except for the fact that Skoronski has not practiced a snap at left tackle this year. Not in rookie minicamp, not in regular minicamp, not in training camp, not in anything. No left tackle for him. So they drafted him to be a guard. So your incompetent commission of coach and general manager drafted the 71st best guard according to Pro Football Focus. And look, Peter might not be the 71st best guard, but he's definitely not the 4th. if he's 71st on this list. Drafted a guard with the 11th overall pick. Will not let him play tackle, which is an infinitely more important position. And he's not even good right now. And that is incompetence. And by the way, he ranks significantly far on these lists behind Bergeron, Avila, and Malk. You could have traded back and drafted those guards. And you took him with the 11th overall pick. Why? Because you're incompetent. That's why. That's why I get so mad about Peter Skoronski, because it doesn't make any sense. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And so I just got to tell you right now, you guys can say what you want. You can make up. I'm sure there are more excuses out there. Did you know Peter's girlfriend broke up with him because he didn't make her a peanut butter and jelly sandwich the day before, so he said that's why he didn't play well? I'm sure there are more excuses to come. But there is nothing that you can tell me. I watched the game with my eyes. There is nothing that you can tell me that does not scream incompetence on the part of the Tennessee Titans. And that's part of the reason why I'd fire the general manager and the coach. Because you guys want to see what happens if you give them more picks and $100 million. And I'm like, if you give that to them, they're going to be as incompetent with that as they have been with this. Why is Steve Avila playing so much better than Peter Skoronski? Why is Matthew Bergeron playing so much better? Why is his rookie year so much worse than Quentin Nelson's? Guard at 11. As I said the second they drafted him, was kicker not available? 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 here on the program. And by the way, AJ is back at it. We'll get to that at some point today as well. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
3rd and 7. Levis is lit up. Khalil Davis making first contact. Huge play for Houston's defense.
There's nothing fancy about this. This is just straight power inside from Davis. He's just gonna play the role of a bully and run over, I believe that's Skoronski. He's just gonna run right over him and get to Will Levis. Levis has zero chance.
37 seconds left. Tennessee working with all 3 timeouts. Levis is buried. Malik Collins.
Spiro, watch the violence that Malik Collins plays with. Look at how he just violently clubs Skoronski, number 77. Just swats him out of the way and then pulls Levis to the ground.
More excuses coming in for Peter Skoronski. And again, I don't have a problem with Skoronski. Like the guy, the player, whatever. I have a problem with the 11th overall draft choice. That's what I have a problem with. This is a lot like Corey Davis, right? Corey Davis wasn't a bad receiver, but Corey Davis as the 5th overall pick with Patrick Mahomes 5 picks behind him was a bad pick. That's how I view the decision to draft Skoronski. And I just, as I, look at the text line, again, the reason I know that I'm right is because there are just more excuses that come one after another after another. We've got the fact that it's the center's fault, the fact that he's not big enough, and so Skoronski has to make up for that. The center that you guys were okay with that I wasn't. We got the left tackle as the problem because he has to make up for the left tackle all the time. Then we've got the transition from tackle to guard as a reason why.
Don't forget the injuries. Did we mention injuries?
The appendectomy?
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Had an appendectomy 4 months ago, and God forbid he get healed on that one. His appendectomy.
Put him behind. Lost some strength, lost some good momentum.
So he's never supposed to get back until the next season?
Oh, he's getting back.
He looked back on Sunday. So that's another excuse. John texts into the text line and says, you're comparing the guard for Andrew Luck to the guard for Tannehill and Will Levis. You think the sack and pressure discrepancy doesn't have anything to do with the quarterbacks they were protecting? That comes from John. So that's the new one. Again, I'm not the one who took the stats of Quentin Nelson and Peter Skoronski, put them on the table and said, see, that was Ramon Foster. And look, I like Ramon. I don't know him that well, but I like him. And he put it on the table and said, see? And in that, Peter Skoronski played 60% of the snaps that Quentin Nelson played as a rookie, and Quentin Nelson had given up less pressures and less sacks. And that season's over. Skoronski could still give up more pressures and more sacks. That one cut that we just played equaled the amount of sacks that Quentin Nelson gave up as a rookie. And by the way, when you bring up Andrew Luck and say, well, you don't think it's different with Andrew Luck and Tannehill? Andrew Luck is the most sacked hit quarterback ever. The reason why Andrew Luck is out of the NFL is because Andrew Luck would not throw the ball away and got hit too bad behind a horrendous offensive line. But add that to the list of excuses for Skoronski. I mean, this is like Family Feud, right? We surveyed 100 Titans fans. We asked them, why is Peter Skoronski not the caliber of being the number 11 overall draft choice at guard? What'd you say? He's not good enough. Show me, is he not good enough? No Titans fan thinks that. It's unbelievable to me. Lenny says he has no help. Bad tackle, bad center. That's ding, number 1. No help. Number 2. Ding. Appendectomy. Number 3. Ding. Bad quarterback play. Number 4. Ding. Bad announcers from CBS. I mean, but the idea that he's not good enough, that was a bad pick, I mean, people are allergic to that. They can't live in this reality. And again, it reminds me a lot of Corey Davis. It's like the whole draft night thing that happened when Diana Rossini let the cat out of the bag that the Titans wanted to trade up for C.J. Stroud. And all of that drama went down. And after the dust settled and the Texans ended up with the quarterback that you wanted, and they got the player that they wanted because they traded with Arizona when you didn't want to trade with Arizona anymore, we had people that would call the show that were saying, no, Jared. The Titans leaked it to Diana so that Diana would then leak it out on TV, and then they would trick the Texans into drafting C.J. Stroud, and then the Titans would get Will Levis, who's better than C.J. Stroud. We showed them. That's what you think happened? It's a hot take. DeJuan's up next on Skoronski. Thank you for calling. What's up, DeJuan?
You know, normally, Jared, I love to listen to the show just to disagree with you. I'm that fan. I'm that caller. Like, I love the show, and I'm always like trying to nitpick and figure out when you're wrong and want to call in and criticize you. But I got to give you your flowers, man. You kept your foot on the pedal with this selection, this pick, and I love the fact that you, in those war room meetings, and giving it to them, saying, hey, hold them accountable. And I agree with you. I just want to give you your flowers. Man, keep your foot on the pedal and hold everybody accountable, the GM included.
DeJuan, thank you. That was very nice of you to say. But you know what I heard today? I heard that I'm dangerous.
Yeah, you are.
When it comes to my Titans takes. Dangerous. Jared Danger Stillman has a nice ring to it. Speaking of dangerous, Joe Rexroad comes to argue. I hope. By the way, one texter says, and I actually, before I tease the Jared versus Joe, which is next, one texter says, could he be playing the wrong position? I mean, he was an All-American at tackle, not guard. I was talking to somebody yesterday, I cannot remember who it was, who was like, how does Vrabel know that he's not going to be a good tackle? They've never played him at tackle. How would he know? And I'm like, that's so true. It's the same way that they thought Andre Dillard could play tackle. They didn't know if he could play tackle or not. They just thought he could. And then they learned that he couldn't. So they drafted Peter, and they don't think he can play at tackle. But how do you know? I mean, you thought Andre Dillard was good. You found out he was bad. Thought Peter can't play tackle. But I digress. They know everything. That's why they suck so bad. Jared versus Joe is next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 through the game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical Studios. A very holiday exciting. This is our last Jared versus Joe of the year, Caroline. Did you know that?
I did not know that. Where are we going to be next week?
Next week, I will be at the Holiday Bowl in San Diego, California. So I will be enjoying that, and you guys maybe will be arguing, or whoever is in the spot. I have no idea what they're.
So everybody's working except for you.
I think the Holiday Bowl might actually be on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. So who knows? Yes. I take off time once it's the holiday season. Yes. Yeah, no. What that may be. Joseph Robinette Rexroad Jr., a.k.a. Joey Stacks, a.k.a. Bad Take Joe, a.k.a. GB Joe, is with us. Hello, Joseph.
Hello. How's everybody?
By the way, there was an impromptu Jared versus Joe yesterday at the Predators game.
I did hear that. I felt left out.
I think a lot of people. Gentry Estes, by the way, Caroline, says he wants to judge the next time that you're out. He wants to judge at one time. So make of that what you will.
Gentry, come on down.
But let's get right to it.
Jared Stillman versus Joe Rexroad. Now on Stillman and Company.
On ESPN.
102.5 The Game.
Jared versus Joe is presented by Pella Windows Indoors of Nashville.
All right, Mike Vrabel, very excitingly at the podium today, announced that if Will Levis cannot go, Ryan Tannehill will be quarterbacking the Tennessee Titans. Is going with Tannehill over Willis the right call? Jared, you go first.
I think it is the right call. Now, I don't think that Vrabel made it for the right reasons. Like, I think Vrabel made it because he's afraid he's going to lose 100-0 if they don't play Tannehill. But I think it's the right call because, well, the reason I'm happy they're doing is I just don't want to watch Willis. But I do think that it's important for these players to play, whether it's Skoronski or Burks or Okonkwo or Spears or Wiley or whomever. And so in order for those guys to play, and after these 3 games, there won't be any live reps for these guys, real football reps until August 10th or whatever it's going to be. So I think it's important. And there's going to be more reps if Ryan Tannehill plays quarterback because there's going to be more first downs. You're going to hold the ball more. And so I think that's really important for the development of this team because I think the only way you get better at doing anything is by doing it. And so I think it's important. I also think it's important, for whether it's Okonkwo or Burks or whatever, they figure out what they're thinking about for next year, and there's no way to be able to evaluate those guys with Willis at quarterback. So simply because of that, I think it's the right decision.
Yeah, I think it's the right decision just because they're still trying to win football games, and I mean that to me is as simple as it gets. Like you want everybody to put everything in. These last 2 weeks, we saw a lot of guys missing today. It's funny how that works when a team gets knocked out, and it's kind of like maybe you're 50-50. Maybe some guys err on the side of being hurt, but for all the guys who are gonna keep putting everything they've got into winning football games, I don't see how you can not put your best option at quarterback out there with them. So I think it's really that simple. And yeah, the Willis, look, I think that Malik Willis, there will be worse backup quarterbacks next year in the NFL than Malik Willis, but I think the Titans
probably not many.
Well, maybe not many, but I bet you there'll be some. And the Titans should be motivated to have a much better one if possible.
So here's the other thing I thought about. Why do you guys think Vrabel said it today that Tannehill would be the quarterback if Levis isn't healthy? When Joe, as you said accurately today, if Vrabel doesn't have to tell you, he's not going to tell you. Why do you think he said it?
Well, except that he said it when he made the switch early in the week. He said it when he made the switch from Mario to Tannehill. He could have carried those, all through the week. So I think sometimes when it's something of high interest, I think just to get it over with is worthwhile. I mean, I think that can be a pain in the butt for a locker room if there is something like that and people are wondering all week. So I don't know, but I'd love to hear your theory. I'm sure it's fascinating.
Caroline, what do you think?
I think it's because Amy wanted fans to know that Tannehill was going to be playing, and it's going to be more worth your ticket money to go see Tannehill than it is Malik Willis.
Bingo!
There you go.
Bingo!
There we go.
Because nobody is going to go to the game if they say Malik Willis is quarterbacking. I'm going to the game on Sunday, and I'm going to tell you right now, if Malik Willis is quarterbacking, I'm not going. And they know that. Like, they know people are not going to go. People are probably not going to go anyways, but if it's Christmas Eve.
You think people are excited about going to see Tannehill? Oh, Tannehill's playing well then. By all means, round the family up.
I think there's a belief that it could be a competitive football game if Tannehill is out there, whereas nobody wants to watch Malik play. That's why they had to lie, basically, about Tannehill playing in that last preseason game, which was a coordinated bullcrappery from the Tennessee Titans about Tannehill handing off those 3 plays in the last preseason game simply to get butts in seats.
By the way, this reminds me of the brain you guys share. You know, we've talked about the Tannehill boohoo crew. You two are the Vrabel shoo-shoo crew. Huh? What do you think?
What does that even mean?
We want to shoo him out of town.
Shoo! Get away, Vrabel. You're out. The Vrabel shoo-shoo crew.
First of all, I've never said that I think that Mike Vrabel should be fired. Second of all, is it so crazy? Is it so crazy to talk about a coach that has gone 12-19 since the 7-game losing streak last year? Is it crazy to talk about how maybe he might not be the best option as the head coach of this team?
If you listen to if you're talking to a majority of the local beat writers here, the answer is yes.
No, it's not crazy, but it is crazy to say if I own the team, I'd fire both of them, though. That is
I did not say
crazy.
that. Do not group me to that shoo-shoo crew.
I still think that you would be the closest, like Jared would still make you vice president of the shoo-shoo crew.
I never said that. Why do I get grouped into this? This is unfair.
If I did own the team, there's a pretty good chance Caroline might have bumped into Bobby Slowick on Sunday and gauged his interest of being the coach of the Titans.
I will be the honorary person who just happens to, quote-unquote, bump into Matthew Stafford and Cabo in the offseason. I volunteer.
Caroline, what's next?
All right, Joe, you go first for this one. Peter Skoronski, 11th overall pick, your first-round pick. Has he been a disappointment for the Titans as the 11th overall pick?
I'd say a slight disappointment. I mean, just because when you take someone there, you hope you have this rookie season where it's just like, oh my goodness, this guy is like I do think of Quentin Nelson, right? Like Quentin Nelson hit right away was like, holy crap, this guy is absolutely like knocking guys, 5 yards downfield. This is the strongest guy in the NFL, whatever. Like if you do take a guard at that point, you hope to see some dominating stuff. In camp, watching him go against Jeff Simmons, I'm like, holy cow, this guy stands up to Jeffrey Simmons like no one I've seen. So I thought we'd see more of that. Has he been hurt a little bit? He had the appendix out. I don't know. I would say because of his draft placement, you want to see greatness and dominance more than we have. I'd say slight disappointment. If we're going to go into I know you didn't ask this, but some people are talking bust. I mean, let's seriously pump the brakes. I mean,
some people are not talking bust. There's one person who's talking bust. There's one person that's using that word. And it's
Who's
me.
that? You?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So again, boy who cried wolf, exaggerations, drama, overreacting, et cetera, et cetera.
I think that Joe's last take and this take from Joe tie into each other pretty well. Where Joe's like, it would be crazy for you to fire the general manager and the coach. And the reason why I would do it is because I think they're incompetent. And part of the reason why I think they're incompetent is because they drafted a guard. First of all, they drafted a tackle with the 11th overall pick, and they're playing him at guard, and he's not good. Like, again, I looked it up today, and I had to do the counting because I'm not a member at Pro Football Focus, and I'm sure Peter is not the 71st best guard in the NFL. I'm sure he's a little bit better than that, but he's probably not the 4th best guard in the NFL at this point in his career. Well, guard is not receiver. It's not pass rusher. It's not corner. It's not quarterback. Guard is not a premium position. And all I know is I worked with somebody who was a GM in the NFL that when he was GM of the Titans, they never had a bad offensive line. And they kept repiling with guys like Benji Olsen, who they'd find in the 5th round. And he told me if you take a guard in the top 10, and I know Peter wasn't in the top 10, but he's pretty damn close, he better be going right to the Pro Bowl. And as the 71st best guard in the NFL, you will not be invited to the Pro Bowl. Not only that, he is certainly not having the season that Quentin Nelson had. And he's not even having, according to all of these metric website.coms, he's not even having as good of a season as Steve Avila, who was drafted in the second round, as Matthew Bergeron, who was drafted in the second round, and as Cody Mauch, who was drafted by Tampa Bay, I think in the third round. He's not even having as good of a season as those guys.
You know what I love about you, Jared?
11th overall pick. Did you see what Jackson Smith and Jigba did Monday night? He won his team the game. And that's why guards don't go at 11. They don't go in the top 10. They don't go because guards don't win their team games. So if you're going to draft a guard that high in the draft, that sucker better be so good, like you said, Joe. Quentin Nelson, that first year, it felt like they were, hey, we're running behind Quentin. We're throwing behind Quentin. He's the leader. Peter's not that guy.
What I love, though, is you have Trevor Manichon, which I think is a great segment. And if Trevor's analysis jives with your take, which typically is this guy or that guy sucks and he's a bust and whatever.
Like Brewer?
That is the most important evidence in the world.
Like how you and Paul said Brewer was a middle-of-the-pack center.
Whatever said is just absolutely gospel. But if his analysis goes against what your take is, then it's, these are analytics that I actually don't like or pay attention to. Look at what they say.
No. Because what
Trevor
said
is that
information. What Trevor said about Peter is that Peter's the only guy that he sees that has potential to be a starter in the NFL. And he thinks that Peter has potential to be a really good guard.
Yeah.
The problem is if I'm using the 11th overall pick, I don't want a potentially good guard. I want a good guard today.
Right. But do you think that these analytics, these underlying numbers, could be affected, could be out of context because things have been so bad around him? Is that possible?
Well, it's on the list of excuses that I keep hearing, but everybody keeps having these different excuses, and not one person has the same excuse.
Right. I'm not making excuses, Jared. I'm asking you if the information you've gotten, which is that. Well, I'm not making an excuse. I said it's been a disappointment. I also, again, there are some extenuating circumstances to pump the brakes on. He's a complete bust, which again you're already ready to go to, which is typical. I shouldn't even try to talk you out of it.
I didn't say he was a complete bust. I tweeted out on Sunday that he is trending towards being a bust.
Trending.
Just like Corey Davis. To me, this is Corey Davis all over again. Everybody kept telling, Corey Davis was hurt. You'll watch. You'll see with Corey Davis. Corey Davis not getting used right. Corey Davis this, Corey Davis that. Then A.J. Brown showed up. And all of a sudden, it was like, that dude is good. Davis is, that dude, that's good. And that's how I feel about Skoronski. Right. And look, Corey Davis, to that point, Corey Davis was a starting receiver in the NFL. But he wasn't worthy of the 5th overall pick in a draft that Mahomes went 10th.
Well, of course he wasn't. Of course he wasn't. But I'm glad you brought him up because what happened? You bring in a great receiver. Now also you have Derek going at full capacity. Corey Davis is a 1,000-yard receiver. Yes, he was absolutely overdrafted. But it's funny how the talent around you can make your performance rise or fall, isn't it? But you all don't want to talk about that unless it's convenient for your take.
But what does that have to do with Corey Davis?
The point being, Corey Davis was a 1,000-yard receiver once he had good talent around him.
No, right? Sir, he was not.
He actually looked like a good. Huh?
He was not.
He was a 1,000-yard receiver in 2020.
No, he dropped the pass that would have given him 1,000 yards. He was not a 1,000-yard receiver.
So he had. Oh, I'm sorry. You have 990.
Okay, you know what I'm when saying. He plays on when he plays on the second best offense in the NFL, he might be the 5th best player in it. Wow.
The simple. Seriously, again, why can't you understand the
5th overall pick, Joe? 5th overall pick,
Jared, take a breath. I want you to breathe into a bag for a minute. I'm not arguing anything about Corey Davis. I'm just making the point that players, when they have good players around them, get better, okay? Take a breath.
Was
Take
he ever
easy.
worth the
Calm
fifth
down.
overall pick?
Every word you hear, you're like a dog. Like, come on, you start screaming about it. Like, shut up and just listen to the point being made.
It's like if they draft, like last year with Malik, for instance, right? Like Malik sucks, and we know that he's not probably even a backup in the NFL, though Joe's trying to make that case, I think. But, like, that to me is not like an overly disappointing pick because we knew that it was taking a shot. We knew that it was a very risky, preposition that they were taking on Malik to see if they could coach up that talent into like that natural ability into something. And the answer is no. But again, it's a third round pick. Now, can you throw those away? Probably not, but it's not. But with Peter, that's the 11th pick. You would need like 10 of those Malik picks in order to equal the 11th overall pick in the draft. So that's what makes the Peter thing disappointing is that with the 11th pick at a non-premium position, it has to be a great player or else you completely wasted that opportunity. And again, what, Jordan Addison and Jackson Smith and Jigba and Zay Flowers and these other receivers are doing is exactly why. That's a premium position that you need, but instead you were like, no, guard. And that is disappointing.
Are you paid by the word? Do you need to admit something to us? Are you paid by the word?
Hey, man, at least I show up to do all 4 hours of my show, unlike you yesterday. Gotcha. Jared versus Joe continues next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
versus Joe Rexrode. Now on Stillman and Company.
On ESPN
102.5 The Game.
More Jared versus Joe. Caroline.
A whole lot of smoke about Arthur Smith potentially getting fired in Atlanta. So, Jared, you go first. If Arthur Smith does get fired in Atlanta, should Mike Vrabel rehire him?
Dude, I don't know. I talked about this for 30 minutes earlier today. I think about the position Vrabel's in, right? So I don't think Tim Kelly's doing a bad enough job to be fired, though it felt like Twitter on Sunday disagreed. And then the text line earlier today was like, I think Kelly's doing a great job. And I was like, so how do you people feel? So I don't even know. But I think Tim Kelly's doing fine. I think that he's doing some good things, and I think he's doing some bad things, like that shotgun wildcat Derrick Henry play the other day, or all these reverses to Treylon Burks that I don't like. But outside of that, I think he's doing an okay job. If Mike Vrabel, if this were last year, and Todd Downing gets fired and Arthur Smith were available, that would be a seamless, easy transition, bring Arthur Smith back. But they've already overhauled the terminology and overhauled the scheme. So Spears has never played in that scheme. Skoronski's never played in that scheme. Levis has played in it in college, but is it the same? I don't know. And yet, Arthur Smith used to draw up plays, and I know he had a better offensive line, and A.J. Brown and Derrick Henry and everything. Arthur Smith used to draw up plays that they'd run with the Titans that I would say, wow. And it was like twice a game. And Joe knows what I'm talking about. You know, Arthur Smith used to have some of those. And I think the one thing that Vrabel loses is fans already don't like his management of the coaching staff, but he kind of loses any benefit of the doubt that Tim Kelly would have had next year goes out the door if Vrabel chooses not to bring back Arthur Smith in favor of Tim Kelly. And so every game like last week where they run it up the middle all the time and the fans get mad, it's going to be like Arthur Smith wouldn't have done that. And so I'm really I think I would bring Arthur Smith back just because I think Arthur Smith is a wizard. And I don't know what's happened in Atlanta. I'm shocked by it, but I don't cover that team, so I'm not going to pretend to know what's going on there. I'd bring Arthur Smith back.
Let me tell you what's going on there.
You don't know.
I'll tell you in general what's going on there. He doesn't have good players. He has a crappy quarterback, so he looks like an idiot. So everybody in Atlanta thinks he's an idiot. So when he's here, yeah, I agree. He was a very good offensive coordinator. He set things up. I mean, he was good. And he had an offensive line that dominated. And
but they didn't dominate from Matt LaFleur.
Well, I mean, they had a decent offensive line in 18. They had an awful offensive line early in 19 with Lewan suspended and Nate Davis not ready and Saffold bad early. And by the end of that year, they were as good as anyone. And then 2020, they were as good as anyone. They had Brown. Yes, he had a good secondary receiver in Davis. Jonnu Smith, Tannehill playing at his highest level. Arthur Smith was very good, and he benefited from outstanding personnel. It's a hard, easy no.
You don't think that Arthur Smith made Jonnu Smith and Corey Davis a lot more money than they were worth?
Oh, I think Derrick Henry and A.J. Brown.
Oh,
and that
give me a
line
freaking break, Joe.
Really?
You think all those red zone touchdowns Jonnu Smith scored are because of A.J. Brown?
Jared, I think that the most important factor in offensive success is players and talent. Arthur Smith was very good. You hit on the easy reason to say no to this at the beginning of your answer, and you should have just stuck with it. They've changed systems completely. They've gone to the Patriot system, all the terminology. You don't mess around with Will Levis right now and change up a system. I think Tim Kelly's fine. The offense is terrible. Arthur Smith with this group would look like an idiot too. And I'm not saying that Arthur Smith isn't. If you gave Arthur Smith and Tim Kelly exactly the same conditions, who do I think would be better? Based on just seeing more excellence from Arthur Smith, I would pick him. But no, you do not mess with this. You do not mess with the scheme. You do not mess with the coaching. If anything, and this is part of the argument against your silly idea to fire everybody, you have to give continuity to your most valuable commodity, who is Will Levis.
So here's where I don't think that continuity matters as much. Levis ran the scheme in college and ran it well.
But he has, it's not exactly the same thing. And also he has he has absorbed this. He has gone all in on this with Charles London coaching him and Tim Kelly. And
well, where did Charles London work last year?
Well, I know that he was in Atlanta last year, but he's with this scheme. They have all of them have worked on this scheme, and now you're talking about changing everything else. Not to mention everybody else in the offense. It's not an offensive coordinator thing. That's not the problem. And again, Arthur Smith, who I think is good, looks kind of like an idiot right now. It's like, gee, does Bijan Robinson get the ball ever? Do you throw to Kyle Pitts? Hey, I don't know what's going on there. All I know is it's amazing how when you have flawed personnel, you get way less smart.
See, I don't care what guys do that are great coordinators when they go off to be head coaches, because I think like Dan Quinn.
But he's a play caller.
But
he's
so
a play
Dan
caller.
Quinn called the plays in Atlanta, and he looked like a bozo. And Dan Quinn is certainly a big part of the Cowboys' success. And
Dan Quinn's a defensive coordinator.
Right.
Right.
And the Cowboys are
A little
bad on
different.
defense?
Yeah, but the point being, this is an offensive play-calling head coach, so I think it's a lot more translatable.
I would just say that I believe that whatever happened in Atlanta, I don't know. I'm not there. Why they didn't draft Will Levis at 7, why Bijan Robinson hasn't become Barry Sanders, I don't know. I just know when I watched every Arthur Smith game and I went to Arthur Smith practice and I saw with my own eyes what Arthur Smith did, he left me saying, wow, with bombs to Khalif Raymond for touchdowns that won games. How many times this year have we been saying, wow, when it comes to Tim Kelly?
Oh, dude, do you suppose that Derrick Henry getting a 5-yard head start before he even gets to contact, running outside zone, and making play action absolutely deadly lethal had something to do with it? I think maybe it did.
So
In the
I remember
game,
when Derrick
the
Henry was still a really
Ravens
good
could not
back.
stop Derrick Henry. They didn't even start to tackle him until he was 5 yards downfield. And compare it to now.
I
mean,
remember when
completely
Derrick
different.
Henry was still a really, really good back, and you asked Mike Vrabel the first question. Do you remember what the question at the end of the 2021 season press conference, the question you asked Mike Vrabel at that press conference?
The end of 2021?
Yes, after the Bengals playoff loss.
I mean, the only thing I remember is like Todd Downing questions.
You asked if the problem with Tannehill was that Arthur Smith left, and Vrabel looked at you in Vrabel fashion and said, Arthur's coach of the Falcons now.
You're right. I mean,
so you thought it was a big deal then?
Dude, I like Arthur Smith. I'm not saying I don't. I think Arthur Smith and Tannehill worked great together. They had a good combination. But again, Arthur
who do you think's
Smith
a better
will tell
coach?
you.
Arthur Smith or Tim Kelly?
I just said, dude, I just answered this. Are we going to go around and around? If I gave him the exact same conditions, I would, and you said pick one of them, I'd pick Arthur Smith.
Okay, that's
But
all I
think
need to
Tim
know.
Kelly's good.
That's enough for me to pick Arthur Smith.
That's not, but you don't know. That's not worth this. And frankly, Deshaun Watson has basically only looked good when Tim Kelly was his OC, so I don't know.
That's not true. Deshaun Watson was good in 17 when Bill O'Brien called the plays and was the OC, and I don't think
it was the best that he played. It was the best that he played.
Well, that's because they were down 100-0 in every game. They threw the ball all over the yard.
Well, fine. Okay, Jared.
I mean,
you got an excuse for everything.
You saw that great Deshaun Watson with Tim Kelly. You watched the game, right? The great Deshaun Watson with Tim Kelly against that terrible Shane Bowen 2020 defense. You were probably at that game at Nissan Stadium. It was an overtime game, and the Titans won because Arthur Smith's offense outdueled Tim Kelly's great Deshaun Watson can't be stopped offense with Tannehill at quarterback. I'm just saying. Caroline, what's next?
All right, Joe, you go first. Should Vanderbilt fire Jerry Stackhouse before SEC play?
No. I mean, I in-season firing is just, it's just blood to the Sharks. You let a coach finish out a season. I mean, what's the benefit? What's the benefit of doing that? Like, I mean, people aren't going to start coming. This isn't going to be like, hey, interim coach in here. Everybody show up now because, maybe Vanderbilt can beat Wofford. You fire a coach in season if there's some sort of conflict, some sort of HR thing, just some sort of, the relationship between, the coach and the AD is untenable. They don't talk anymore. I mean, unless it's something dramatic like that, you let a coach play out the season. And then, look, they're not going to make the NCAA tournament. I think 5 years of not making the NCAA tournament is enough to see that Jerry Stackhouse is not going to get it done here, so you do it then. But in season, that's just, all that is basically to placate people like us. I'm sure Jared just, pounding the table for it. He wants so bad. I mean, Jared loves firing so much. I was talking with Pete Weber last night. We were talking about like the 12 days of Jared firings. A Carthon and a pear tree. Like, how many people could Jared get fired in the holiday season? It'd be amazing.
Well, let's go over this because this came up earlier today.
Good one.
Who was I wrong about Craig Aukerman?
Did you predict the future? No.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Ian, did I not say when Vrabel and I got into it in the Rand Carthon press conference, I said we're going to play this clip this season because when it's funny today in January, but it ain't going to be funny during the season.
Dude, we hear your stories like, dude, you can't tell the same story 100 times in like 3 months.
You said I couldn't predict it, and I did.
You didn't predict what was going to happen this year. This was by far the worst stuff from Craig Aukerman this year. It was why he got fired.
Sure. Was I wrong about John Hines and David Poyle?
I mean, David Poyle retired.
But was I wrong about that? If he wouldn't have retired, would it have been time?
I mean, well, yeah, sure. I mean,
okay.
But again,
was I wrong about Kim
Wisenhunt? On some island on Poyle? People were screaming out Poyle for years. The fans were saying, about who?
About Kim Wisenhunt.
Dude, I don't know.
No, I was not wrong about that. Those are the
You're
coaches.
The only person who wanted Wisenhunt fired?
No, I was, in fact, the first person that called for Wisenhunt to be fired after the Dolphins game in 2015.
I know. You're the only show in town.
I didn't say I was the only one saying it, but I was the first.
Yeah.
And I will say this.
Okay.
Listen,
if you always scream for everybody to be fired all the time, you will be first a lot. I will give you that.
Who else have
Let me give you a golf clap for that.
Who else have I called to be fired?
Dude, I don't freaking keep track of all your silliness.
I just went over it with you, all of the people. That's the point, is I'm normally right about this stuff.
So you didn't call for Shane Bowen's firing ever?
Shane Bowen sucks.
Okay. Come on. There's dozens of people. Come on, Ian. Ian, at least give me a chuckle. There's dozens of people Jared has called for to be fired who ended up not being worthy of being fired.
There is one coach that I've been on the radio that I called for to be fired that I ended up regretting.
Who?
Vandy's Derek Mason, who's now MTSU's Derek Mason. He's the one coach. Everybody else.
I mean, you end up calling for everybody to be fired. That's fine.
That's not true. That's not true. And I told you yesterday at the Preds, this is the first time I've called for a Titans coach to be fired in 8 years. 8 years.
There's been one coach since that last coach.
Yeah, and everybody wanted to run him out of town except for me, who thought it was stupid to fire that coach. So clearly, I don't want to fire everybody when the popular thing was to want to fire that coach, even though we won a playoff game for like the first time in 13 years around here.
Courage of you to not call for Vrabel's firing after they got to the AFC title game. I am so impressed, Jared.
No,
congratulations.
the courage for me to go against the grain when everybody wanted to fire Malarkey, and I didn't. I thought it was a bad idea.
Go read my columns in the Tennessean from that time. I completely hated that move.
Now, to answer Caroline's question, I'll just say this about Jerry Stackhouse. Why not? Like, what does Vanderbilt have to gain by keeping Jerry Stackhouse in the position? Nobody's showing up for the games. They've already done with the NCAA tournament. The worst thing that could possibly happen is Jerry Stackhouse get on a heater like he did at the end of last year, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, they showed progress at the end of the year, and just stall the growth even more. I think there are so many Vanderbilt fans that are disgruntled that they might actually go to the game in support of the university for firing Jerry Stackhouse because they would be happy about it. What I know is they ain't going to come with him as the coach, and it's not going to change anything. So what's the point of keeping Jerry Stackhouse?
Yeah, I have a hard and fast rule on in-season stuff. I don't see why it's necessary unless you have something beyond poor performance on the field. If they were to fire him, is it like some egregious, transgression at this point? No. I mean, it's 4.5 years. I just don't, just let a coach. He's drawing a big paycheck. Do your work here for the next few months, and then evaluate at the end of the year. That's what you're supposed to do as an AD.
Caroline, who wins?
I mean, with Jerry Stackhouse, I would just let him go. It's so bad with Vanderbilt. It is so bad. Whether you let go of him now, whether you let go of him at the end of the season. I mean, the season's shot anyways. But as far as Arthur Smith is concerned, I would not bring him back. I would not disrupt what you have going because I don't think that Tim Kelly is doing a bad job. I think he's actually doing a fine job. And I mean, bringing in Arthur Smith, rehiring Arthur Smith. Now, if Tim Kelly was awful, I would get it. I would say, yes, absolutely, that's a slam dunk. But Arthur Smith's offense in Atlanta isn't really looking so hot. So are you going to move on from something that's working just to bring someone back? It's like getting back with an ex. I think it's been fine. I think it's been fine. So I'm stuck here.
What do you think about Skoronski?
You keep saying that he sucks.
Joe
wins.
Joe
wins. Joe wins. He had a bad day. He is not a bad player.
71st.
He sucks. He's a bust. He's the 71st best guard in the NFL.
Oh, yeah. Now Jared likes analytics.
Trending.
Jared likes
PFF
analytics.
is not analytics. PFF are these guys sitting in their freaking basements grading tape on plays they don't know.
Okay, what's
that's
analytics?
what PFF is. PFF is the biggest load of bull crap. But I also don't
I don't like PFF. You're the one citing them.
I also don't think if he's 71st that he's in reality third in the NFL. Which if you're the 11th overall pick, you should be. Ladies, gentlemen, thank you. Jared versus Joe. As always, our final Jared versus Joe of 2023. By the way, I heard on Joe's show today that I'm dangerous.
Oh, God.
We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106 again.
So if you're looking to point blame about the Titans' offensive line, first, point at the guys who haven't done their job well. And second, and this is the second time I've asked it, I asked Vrabel what degree of guilt or blame goes to the people who decided that this group was good enough to protect the quarterback and to block for the run game. And he avoided the question the second time, and it'll be one of my first questions at the season-ending press conference.
Oh, goody.
Those are the people who are culpable for the pass protection and the run blocking are Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon, who assembled this group and thought it was sufficient.
I do not disagree with that. I do not disagree that Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon are responsible for the offensive line. That was PK this morning on Robbie and Rex Road. Now, somehow, some way, today I got labeled as dangerous, which honestly, in my younger single days, I would absolutely have loved. Dangerous. And so, with that danger in the heart, I was listening to Paul, who, like I wish I had been labeled when I was younger, finally says I'm dangerous.
He's dangerous, right, for Titans fans. He's just dangerous. He's got no nuance to him. So he's saying, well, when Munchak was here, he had input in what players they brought in. And Rand has said the assistant coaches have input in what players they bring in. So Haas clearly had input in what players they bring in. And he leaves no space between.
So I said when Mike Munchak was the offensive line coach, my theory is that the Titans offensive line coach who has no experience is not good enough. That's my theory, that it's not good enough, that they need a coach with some NFL experience. You know, again, Munchak, Russ Grimm, the good offensive line coaches they've had here that had previous experience coaching offensive lines in the NFL. And all I'm saying is that when I was a kid and the Titans had great offensive lines and they would constantly lose guys because they'd sign for more money elsewhere because they were good players, they'd just plug David Stewart in, or they'd just plug Benji Olsen in, or they'd just plug Eugene Amano in, or they'd just plug Justin Hartwig in every year. Guys were 4th-round picks, 3rd-round picks, 5th-round picks. It didn't matter. And I asked the guy who picked those players, I said, why was it that you never had a bad offensive line? And he said, well, I had Mike Munchak. So Mike Munchak would help us evaluate the players, and if we thought we were going to draft a lineman, we got him around Mike Munchak. And if Munch gave us the thumbs up or the thumbs down, then we knew. That's all I'm saying. So I do think a good offensive line coach can make things a little bit better. That's what I'm saying. Continue.
So Haas clearly had input in what players they bring in, and he leaves no space between the degree of input Mike Munchak, a Hall of Famer who's one of the best position coaches probably in history of the league, what degree of input he would have versus what degree of input a first-year position coach with no experience would have.
Pause it.
And he acted yesterday like it would be.
Doesn't that answer my question? Like, doesn't that answer my take for me? Where Paul's saying, he is not going over the fact that Mike Munchak was a great coach and this guy was in his first year. Right. Which is why I want a better offensive line coach. Also, we can't have it both ways, right? We can't say Rand Carthon said he went to the coaches for their input, and for Bozo, the offensive line coach, to say, yeah, Rand went over coaching tape with us about which guys they wanted, and then say the guy has no input. But please continue.
What degree of input he would have versus what degree of input a first-year position coach with no experience would have. And he acted yesterday like it would be exactly the same. I'm here to tell you it's nothing the same, no degree. Does Haas, a first-year coach working with a first-year GM, have the same degree of input in who they're bringing in
So dangerous, like
that's dangerous because
like
Titans fans
double
who
agent,
are susceptible to and impressionable and think that they're learning something from somebody who is cast as an expert is saying something that's completely nonsensical.
Okay. So my point is a better offensive line coach will help you select better players. That's my point. Especially when the GM says we want to get with the coaches in order to decide which players we pick. I didn't say that the offensive line coach here picked these players. I didn't say that. I just said that the idea that having a good offensive line coach doesn't make a difference, which was the original claim that Paul made, that a good offensive line coach can't coach up this terrible talent anyways. My point is a good offensive line coach finds better talent. Just like Benji Olsen and Eugene Amano and Zach Pillar and Gennardo DiNapoli and Michael Roos. And yeah, that's the point. Dangerous? Please. My favorite thing, though, is I've always learned this. People who swear they never listen are the people that listen the most. Paul said that he only listened when he was in the car yesterday, and then he got to the grocery store, and then he decided to listen to Christmas music on the way home. Do we buy that Paul only listened to 2 segments ever? I don't. But you know what? I will keep the nickname Danger. 615-737-1025, Stillman & Company, 1025, 106 The Game.
A.J. Brown went back and forth with a fan on Twitter about what really happened on a 3rd and 8 play with 1:41 left in the third quarter, and the Eagles leading 17-10 at Seattle on Monday night. A.J. responded to the fans' interpretation of that failed play by saying, "Y'all fans swear y'all know everything. It's a shot play to me. I'm the first read. He just missed the throw. When the you-know-what works, everyone is happy. When I make plays, everyone happy. But when it's incomplete, it's I'm making him throw me the ball. I get blamed for more you-know-what than anything. Tired of y'all playing with my character," said A.J. Brown. So, Richard Sherman, do you like or have a problem with A.J. Brown responding that way?
Yeah, as somebody who responds frequently and has responded throughout my career, I have no problem, and I cannot be a hypocrite in this situation and say I have a problem with him responding. Now, his response, I do have a bit of a problem with, because you left too much gray area. You left too much up for interpretation by the outside world, and that's why we're sitting here talking about it now.
That was this morning on Skip Bayless's show. Richard Sherman's like, I don't have a problem with AJ tweeting, but it's too ambiguous. Welcome to AJ's Twitter fingers, folks. Now, AJ versus Philly fans on Twitter was something that I expected. I just thought it would happen last year, but they won too many games, and so everybody totally forgot about that, how AJ would go crazy on social media, and now that they're starting to lose some games, Ian, it's back.
Yeah, when the losing comes, the frustration builds. So,
although I only think AJ's jealous because Devontae Smith is on that team. He never got jealous here or mad at the fans. It was always about his contract when he would get mad here.
Well, you have to find something else to be mad about if it's not going to be your contract.
That is true. That is true. Again, I'm just shocked that AJ versus the Philly fans didn't happen the first year. That's it for us. Tough one for the Preds last night. Preds Insiders is next.